Welcome to the Casual Shooters Podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. I am your host, David Riddle. Okay, so today we have a special guest. This is the second Olympian that I've had on. If you all remember Lanny Barnes-Siggins, Olympic biathlete. Well, now I've got an individual coming on today that you've already heard once, but now we're going to get his entire story. He's a four-time Olympian, and his bio is so big I didn't even try to write it down. I'm just going to literally read it right off of somewhere else here. But he has 3 medals and 3 World Cups in 2009, a gold, a silver, a bronze. He's a 10-time world medal winner. He's triple distinguished. He has over 30 ISSF, International Shooting Sports Federation, kind of like IPSC, but for bullseye. Top 10 finishes. And he won a gold medal at the 2017 ISSF World Shoot Finals in New Delhi. If you would, join me in welcoming to the show 4-time Olympian and former Marine, Mr. Keith Sanderson. How you doing, Keith?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on again. I appreciate it. If you would, take a moment and introduce yourself.
Well, as you said, my name is Keith Sanderson. I've shot a lot of things.
That can be taken a couple different ways.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I started out shooting in the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps as I wanted to be a sniper, which is ironic because I never got to be, at least not in the Marine Corps. When I was 15 or 16, I read Marine Sniper, which actually I have right back here. So after that, I changed from wanting to be a fighter pilot to wanting to be a sniper. I went to the recruiting office when I was like 15 or 16, and they laughed at me. And then I eventually came in, went to boot camp a week or two after I turned 18. And I tried to go earlier. I tried to go when I was 17, and I was enlisting from San Antonio, and they had no rush to get people to get people in. So what ended up happening is I said, "Hey, get me in as soon as you can." So what I didn't understand is the way the recruiters are. If they have somebody that's going no matter what, they'll just wait and hold them in their back pocket until someone drops out at the last minute. So I was on this like 12-hour notice for a couple months. And then presumably someone dropped out and they said, "Hey, you can come in, in 4 days," or whatever it was. But you have to go open contract. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be a cook. Like,
Right.
everything I heard, if you go open contract, you're going to be a cook. If you're lucky, you get infantry. And they said, "Well, you're too smart to be a cook, so you'll probably be infantry." I'm like, okay, that's perfect. Ended up getting electro-optical ordnance maintenance. So it's basically a toe tack, or we fixed all the laser and missile guidance systems and stuff like that on the ground side. I didn't like it very much. I liked fixing stuff. I didn't like not being able to be a sniper or a grunt. So that was kind of a challenge. Somehow I thought, like in the back of my head, if I shot good enough, they would let me. Because Carlos Hathcock, the second, the one who was a sniper, was an MP. He wasn't a grunt. So I was like, well, if I shoot good enough, then maybe I could be a sniper. So I ended up going to division matches, and of course, I was focused on rifle. And my first division match was 94, and I was clapping. So I was just out of the medal bracket, I think, with rifle, and did abysmal with a pistol. It was, I didn't know what I was doing. I think back then and probably now, the Marine Corps shot or taught rifle shooting pretty well, and pistol was just bad. They didn't know how to teach it, and I don't think they know how to teach it now. Uh, I'm a little bit biased on the pistol side now. But I remember thinking the opportunity for improvement was there with pistol. So the next year at 96 at division matches, um, I tried to put a little bit more effort on pistol because that's where the most rewards were, or the most possible gains. Uh, that was actually a funny story. Is my platoon and my company wanted to let me go. I was in 29 Palms. I was in tow platoon, first tank battalion, and but the battalion commander said we didn't have any money for me to go all the way to Camp Pendleton. So I was like, well, I'll take leave. I have like 50 days on the books or whatever. And he said, no, that's not legal because it's something that is appropriate for TAD. So therefore, we can't let you go on permissive or on leave, which was true. I found out later on that is like a DOD order.
Mm.
So, like any cocky young corporal would, I requested mass. Went to my company commander. He said, "Hey, Sanderson, you're a good Marine, but you already heard what the boss said. So, no. Do you want to go further?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." I was like, "Okay, we'll go talk to the battalion commander tomorrow." So tomorrow came, talked to battalion commander. He's like, "Hey, Corporal Sanderson." This time I had like first sergeant, company commander. Now the company commander is my advocate, representing me on my side, kind of. Um, Sergeant major was in there. There was a lot more people in the room, and felt a little bit like an NJP. So I was at there at the position
Oh,
of attention or parade rest
stress.
for almost the whole thing. And he said, "Look, I could send you here, or I could send a Marine to Corporal's Chorus, and I think that's more important." So the answer is ultimately no. Do you want to go further? And I was like, "Yes, sir, I do." So the regimental commander of 7th Marines Regiment was Colonel Jim Mattis, who
Oh,
later on
full bird
became,
colonel.
at that time he was the commanding officer of 7th Marines. Then it was definitely like an NJP. I had the regimental gunner in there. I had all these different like people in there. I was in position of attention for a solid hour. And at the end, he said, "Well, I'm a colonel, and I think this is what's best." And the answer is no. Do you want to go further? And I was like, "Yes, sir, I do." And I keep on saying Colonel Mattis because that's how I remember him. But Jim Mattis
It's
probably remembers
appropriate.
this because nobody ever wins a request mass, right? I've never
Right.
heard of it. So what he said
Persistence,
was,
though.
General Labouty, the CG of 1st Marine Division, will be in 29 Palms in 3 days. Is it okay if we wait 3 days instead of the 24 hours that is required? Because otherwise they'd have to send me down to Camp Pendleton, which would cost the same as what I was asking for. So I said, "Yes, sir." And General Labouty said, "No, this is not Marine Corps guidance. It is a Marine Corps order. You will send him and you will fully fund him to division matches." So at that point, I was on my way to
Oh.
Western Division matches,
Okay,
and
hold
I
up.
had the full weight
Hold.
of my command from the CG of First Marine Division all the way down to my platoon, um, kind of on my side, obviously, but at the same time, it was an enormous amount of pressure to perform. I ended up getting a second bronze with pistol, and again, I was just out of the medal bracket with with rifle, and went to Marine Corps championships. Pressure was off a little bit, at least that pressure. Then I got first gold with a 45. To backtrack a little bit, I don't know how long this is going to go. This is going kind of slow so far. But to backtrack a little bit, I'm at Western Division, and I'm trying to be a sponge. Any bit of information I can glean from anybody I'm listening to. And I think it was a staff sergeant at the time, Mario Lozoya, two-time national champion, was there. He wasn't competing, but he gave a hip pocket class after we were done shooting one day. So I was there with about a dozen Marines, and I transcribed notes on my forearm. And later on that night in the squad bay, I copied them over to two full yellow legal pads, which I still have, of notes. One of the simple
Whoa.
things that he told me was, he said, grip my hand. And I was like, okay. Now grip it like you do when you're shooting. Now I was taught, grip it really loose, which is, I laugh because it's so completely stupid, but I believed it. And he said, no, 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 no. And Lazoya was, he didn't have really, he wasn't like an incredible Hulk or anything. He had real skinny forearms. And he's like, this is how I grip the pistol. And he crushed my hand, and it hurt. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'll grip it a little bit harder and see what happens. And it helped. And I ended up getting second bronze. And then at Marine Corps Championships, I was like, well, if that worked, I'm going to crimp this magazine in the magazine well. I'm going to grip this thing as hard as I possibly can, and then some. And every day I would, after we're done shooting rifle and pistol, I would I would do hold-in drills and dry fire for until the armory closed, like 45, 60 minutes or whatever it was. And I gripped harder and harder and ended up getting first gold. So that was that was pretty good. Then I got picked up on the summer team and ended up getting first gold at inter service, which is not as funny a story, but there's a little story to that too. Just about not giving up, because I started out really bad, but I didn't give up, and I finished strong and ended up doing pretty good. Got first gold. Went distinguished. Came back in '97. Was a pretty good shooter, solid gold team. So in the Marine Corps shooting team, we had Scarlet team, which is the top four, and then we had gold team, which is the next four. Uh, I was solid gold and came back on in '98. Won Western, set the Western Division match record, which if it was still the same course of fire, it would still hold, because that was pretty solid. I won that match by like 25 points. It was a lot.
Whoa.
I also got I think a silver medal. I think first silver or second silver in rifle. Went to um, Marine Corps championships. Won the Walsh. Got first silver with rifle. I like M14s. They were fun. The other times at Marine Corps championships, I wasn't allowed to compete with a rifle, because the way that they did it back then, if you didn't medal at division, you couldn't medal at Marine Corps championships. And what they said was, to be picked up on the summer team with pistol, you had to shoot what we called the clinic, which is when everyone else was shooting rifle, we shot 22 Smith & Wesson Model 41s. So I didn't get to shoot rifle in those years. But now I medaled at division, so now I had to shoot rifle at Marine Corps championships, and I do like the M14. Um, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't like it technically. It's a horribly engineered gun compared to like an M16, AR-15, but they are fun to shoot. Um, then I did well that year. Right before inter service, I got recalled back to my unit, which was now First Marines Regimental Tow Platoon. No, I'm sorry, I was in 3-1 at the time, so I got recalled. Turns out I knew we were going on float. I thought was on the summer team, so I had 6 days to drive from. Well, I had to drive from Tennessee back to Quantico, get all my stuff, and then drive from Quantico to Camp Pendleton, and then catch a ride down to San Diego, get on a boat, and go on the 7th month of deployment.
Good Lord.
Um, so then right after that, I was emailing my monitor a lot, who was a gunny who I used to work for, so he liked me. about going to Marine Corps shooting teams on the permanent team where you have more than just temporary orders. And was it January, February of '99? I had orders to Quantico.
Now, okay, a lot of questions here, but we'll start with between 98 and 99, who was the team coach or captain? Because don't they also have to agree to that with the monitor?
We didn't have a coach. And the whole time I was involved, we never had a coach. I don't think they have a coach now, which is probably a good thing. We had peer coaching. We had team OIC and an NCOIC.
Okay.
Chief Officer Malsbury was the OIC, I think, in '98. I'm sure in '98. I think he came on board in '97. Um, so I don't remember who was there in '99. Chief Warrant Officer Carbonary was our OIC in 2000. And then the OIC teams had changed a couple times. I don't remember who was what year. But the teams was obviously asking for me.
Okay.
I was a good shooter. Um, and then in '99, I think it was '99. Yeah, '99 at Inter Service, I broke 2650 for the first time, and then after that, I was averaging in the 2660s. So I was clearly the top of the Marine Corps shooters because we no longer had Jason Meidinger there, who was so in '96 we had Zins as the national champion. He was the top dog, won most matches. Meidinger, who was his second summer, came in second at most matches, even though it was only his second summer. And then he, in '97, Meidinger went around, was the first Marine and only Marine ever to do this, won division matches, Marine Corps champions, um, inter service, and the national championships all in the same year, and became, I think he was 23 years old at the time, the youngest national champion in history, which is it still holds true now at 23.
Wow.
Um, '98, when I was halfway there, um, he was still on the team. Was I? Yeah, he was still on the team then. I don't remember what happened there at nationals because I was deployed in inter service. I missed that. '99, my dinger goes out and he shoots. I think it was in the Quantico match. Shot at 897 out of 900 in the center fire match, breaking the center fire national record, which was decades old. The next week in Montpelier, Virginia, he shot at 898 in the 45 match, which I
Damn.
laugh because that is insanely good. To this day,
Right.
no one's come close. Um,
That means in 90 shots, the dude only dropped 2 points.
right.
That's
I think one of them was
crazy.
short line. So that means he had 200s at the 50 and 199. And I mean that is really incredible. Nobody's come close to that. Um, and then the next week in West Virginia, he had an 898 with 62 X's in the 22 match, which tied Higginson's record from like 30 years before, who was also a Marine, but he tied him down to the X count. So that's the only one of those three national records that he doesn't hold outright that he
Outright.
shares.
Wow.
Um, he shot a 2654 in that match, and he had three saved rounds and
Whoa,
a bunch of double
crap.
alibis where he had a malfunction. You raise your hand, you shoot again, another malfunction, clears it, and keeps on shooting. And there were three times where he shot, the bullet left the barrel because there's a bad lot of ammo, didn't hit the target. If it leaves the barrel, then it counts,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
So that would have been, let's assume they were nines, 2681. If you assume they were tens, 2684, and would have crushed the national record. So yeah, my dinger was pretty good. Um, Come 2000, he was no longer there, so it was just me. I wasn't the top dog because I was the best. I was the top dog at the time because Brian Zins wasn't there and my dinger wasn't there, especially my dinger.
Okay. So, what ammo were you guys using? Were you using Lake City?
So in '97, the Marine Corps shooting team was pretty poor. I think we picked up only 3 or 4 summer shooters on the pistol team, and we had no money, so we couldn't afford any any ammo.
Well, all you have to
So
do, and not to get political, but all you have to do is look to see who's in the White House, and you'll know what the budget level is. So,
that
yeah.
this was a internal fault to Marine Corps shooting teams. They had fought.
Oh, okay.
They forgot to allocate ammo for the reserve team, and they ran
Wow.
out of money. Didn't have enough ammo at the time. Gunny Lawless, I think he retired a master sergeant or sergeant major or something. He I knew him when he was a gunny. He pitched the idea: let's buy 2 Dillon 1050s, and we'll reload, and it'll save us X number of dollars. So that's what we did. In that
Hmm.
first part of the summer, we did our testing, and we came up with that one load, what I call the Marine Corps load. It was a 185 grain jacket hollow point between or behind 4.4 grains of Vitavori N310, and that shot really good in every gun, and it was the best in like 75-80% of our guns as far as groups. I mean, it was shooting 1 inch, sub 1 inch groups at 50 yards for 10 shot groups. Um, Not sub 3 inches, sub 1 inch. It was a
Wow.
great lot. This one day in '97, we as a team loaded all the ammo for the whole summer over a 24-hour period. We didn't
Oh,
sleep at all
boy.
through the night in the loading room. We were throwing machines. So like you and I were on a machine. The other Marines were filling powder or weighing bullets so we were
Right.
all, it was a really small team, about 10 Marines, and we were all doing something, and we loaded like 30-40,000 rounds of match ammunition that one day or that one night. That's the ammo that my Dinger won nationals with that year, and did really well with next year. Come '99, when my Dinger set those records, since we hand loaded them, we didn't seal the primers. You just seeded the primers, and the rumor was that he spilt a can of Coke on his ammo and kept on shooting it, like in the car or something, and some of the primers got wet. I don't know if that's what happened, but that was what the rumor was. Uh,
Wow.
so he had a lot of duds, which was unfortunate, because he should have had that national record. Because he's Meidinger is probably the best bullseye shooter. In my opinion, and I think most people's opinions, of anybody ever.
What happened to him?
He he quit shooting. So in 2099, in after the summer of '99, he made the transition and tried to shoot international. And he was a good international shooter. I mean, he wasn't a great international shooter. He wasn't making finals or anything in World Cups. But as far as Americans go, he was pretty good. And I think he got a gold and a silver, or a gold and a bronze at the Pan Am Games in '99 in free pistol and air pistol.
Okay.
And I don't remember what the order was. It was either a gold, silver, or gold, bronze, but I'm pretty sure it was a gold. Now that's the Pan Am Games, which is just North and South America. It's not the same level of competition as Europe and Asia. There's good shooters there, not so much in free and air. Not in rapid fire. We have Cuba, who's really good, but in free and air, they still aren't that good. But anyway, the point is that he was shooting really good. I've watched him shoot 591 or 592 an air pistol in practice on paper targets there in Quantico and in the test shed. Not the test shed, but the old running target range. So
Oh,
he
okay,
had
yeah.
paper targets with the strings that were set up there. I watched him shoot that. That would have been a national record if he had shot that in competition. So he was, and that'll make a final. I mean, a 590 in air pistol to this day is an incredible score. So he was incredible potential. He was an 0369. He was an 0311. Got promoted to staff sergeant while in Quantico. So he's an 0369. Um, with no fleet experience as a 0369.
Oh,
Um, he was up for reenlistment and he said, "Hey, I want to go to the 2000 Olympics." And the teams was fighting for him too. And his monitors said, "No, the second you reenlist, you're going to the fleet and you're going to deploy." And he's like, "Well, I'll just get out of the Marine Corps."
wow.
And he's like, "Okay, we got plenty of staff sergeants. Bye." So he called their bluff. He got out of the Marine Corps, went to college, as far as I know, he did, um, and then he's been working for I think Department of Energy or something there in Fredericksburg, not Fredericksburg, in Richmond, ever since. And he's been really successful, has a couple kids, and he's had a great life.
What's
So
his
I'm
first
envious
name?
that a little bit that he's able to give up shooting and be happy. I haven't, for me, I often say it's a lot more like heroin. I've never done heroin, of course, but I hear
It's
it's hard
addicting.
to like give up. But
Yeah.
yeah, I often say that gold is the most addictive substance. Whether you're Warren Buffett trying to make it or you're trying to win it in competition, once you taste it, it's hard not to go back for more.
Okay. What's his first name?
Jason Meidinger.
Okay, it is Jason. All right. Do you know how to spell? Is it Meidinger?
Yep. We used to joke that there is no me or I in Meidinger. Oh, wait a minute. It starts out with an E and an I.
That sounds like something people would say in the Marine Corps. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Okay. All right. I am gonna track this guy down because I'm only an hour from him. So okay. Wow, interesting. All right, now we got to. I still have a bunch of questions from everything you've already said, but now I want to back up to the icebreaker questions. Number one, if you could learn going back to the very beginning of your career, your shooting career, think Neo in the Matrix, where he would sit in the chair, they'd plug him in, and they'd download software directly to his brain
Yeah.
housing group.
I've always wondered why he didn't learn how to like download the fundamentals of marksmanship so they'd miss less. But
If there's one shooting skill you could learn instantly, what would it have been?
like, well, you have to define shooting skill because otherwise I'm just wanting to hit the center of the target every time. Is that a skill? I mean, it's built upon a whole bunch of others.
Mine
So
is shooting accurately while moving at any
shooting
speed.
accurately while moving laterally is one of the hardest things you can do. Doing it while
Yes.
moving forward is easy. Doing it sideways is a lot more difficult. Um, I can tell you about a cool stage of fire I did with the Marines in Hawaii, and then did for like a lot of other units. That's really fun. But which is shooting while moving laterally, or shooting laterally while moving. Um, I'm tempted to say something as vanilla as good trigger control, because the like to me, there's only four mistakes you can make when shooting a pistol: position, grip, trigger, and sights. Now, whether the sights are a dot or iron sights doesn't matter. It's the sights. Trigger is what makes the gun shoot. Grip is the marriage between you and the weapon. It's the anchor of your trigger finger. Grip provides sight alignment. It's also very important. Whether it's one-handed or two-handed, it's still grip. Position provides sight picture. Uh, Whether it's prone, kneeling, shooting around a barricade, shooting on one foot, maybe upside down on a trapeze or something. That's all positions, what your body's doing. So I've often said that All four of those are equal. And if you ask any top shooter what the most important one is, what they'll tell you is the one that they either consciously or subconsciously perceive to be their weakest. So if they say trigger, they'll think they say trigger because that's where they need the most work. If they say grip, like Mario Lozoya was big on grip and taught me about grip. And that was he was probably really strong in the other four, but that was the one where he had the most gains.
Right.
So I think they're all equal. And the reason why I'd say trigger is because I've tasted a time when I had, and this is going to sound really, really cocky. I'm embarrassed even saying it, but there was a time where I'm really confident that I had the best trigger control of any human on the planet.
Okay.
I was ranked number one in the world. So objectively, I was pretty good at putting everything together. But I was also dry firing at that time, well in excess of 200,000 dry fires a year. And so that's like, that's pushing over 1,000 a day, which was at that time easy. So, yeah, so I know how much work it took to get to that level. And and for me, it's hard to get that good without an electron trigger. I had an electron trigger then.
So,
Let's go back and where were we?
all
Whenever you're
right.
ready.
Yeah. What were we talking about last? I
I
don't.
don't remember. We
You were still talking about the four components,
Oh
the
yeah.
four things you can mess
So
up with shooting.
so just to reiterate, I've tried to narrow it down from first principles. Like the way I look at it is there's a million different mistakes you can make. But every mistake the other side of the coin is you not doing something the right way. And as it turns out, at least from my perspective, there's only four things that you can not do the right way: position, grip, trigger, and sights. So the reason why I like looking at it like that is because now, as soon as I make a mistake, instead of thinking like, "Oh, don't do this," or "Don't jerk the trigger," or "Don't look down," whatever that mistake is, you can flip it around in your head really quickly and say like trigger, and you have a really good idea, a good picture, a good feel in your head of what good trigger is, which is uninterrupted, so on and so forth, or sights, or grip, what that's supposed to feel like. So you've trained and you get a good model in your head of what it's supposed to be. You can recall that pretty quick, and ideally, like even during a stage of fire, you can do it like on the move. And so you have those four things: position, grip, trigger, and sights. If I had to pick one thing that if say one thing I could just be good at or world class at right away without any effort, it really depends on the time of the week. Like if I've had a lot of injuries over the years, so that I could say grip, and that would fix a lot of problems. With my forearm, I had a surgery here in my forearm, so that would have like fixed 4 years of my life. If more than that, if I would have had that fixed right away, just instantly, wave a magic wand and grip is fixed, because it was a physical structural problem. I've had 3 back surgeries and a cervical disc replacement, so I've had some back problems.
Holy cow!
Yeah, so if you say if I was to say position, well, that would take care of that, right? So that'd be the easy button for that. But aside from personal things, what thing takes the most work to get the best at? Like I've never had the best hold. I don't think. I don't think I've had the best grip. I mean, internationally, I probably have the strongest grip because I focus on it more than the internationals. I shoot 45s, so and I started out as a service pistol shooter. So most of the internationals don't. They shoot either exclusively 22 or air pistol. So I probably have the strongest grip of any of the top international shooters. Position, again, I've never had the best hold. I got a pretty good grip, but probably not the best. I've had the best trigger control in the world. And, I don't think I've had the best sights. In other words, my ability to align the sights has probably not ever been the best. But I can speak to trigger control, and I know how much work it takes to get there. Sights, it's not about how good you can see. Almost every Olympic medalist I know, or at least 75% of them, wear glasses. Not just shooting glasses, but they wear glasses day to day.
Correct.
You have to be able to see good enough to align your sights. And which, just to clarify that, to go back and put my coaching hat on for a second, I often say, if you think your sights are aligned, you're not looking hard enough, because your sights are never aligned. So like it has to always be a struggle to align your sights. You're always trying to. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to have them aligned before you start squeezing, like I alluded to the other day. It's a race between trying to align your sights and when that trigger's going. The situation determines how fast this guy moves, and you do the best you can to get your sights aligned before. In other words, if there was a target or a bad guy like 5 meters in front of me, and I was coming from a holster, right? Am I going to wait for my sights to be aligned before I start squeezing the trigger?
No.
No. As soon as I clear leather, I'm going to popping shots off, right? But I'm trying to align the sights. I just don't even get there. My trigger was going no matter what. I just wasn't there, So none of the fundamentals change. It's the same whether that target's 5 meters in front of me. If he's 50 meters out, well, now this guy can slow down a little bit. So now I can come all the way up, whether it's one-handed or two-handed or whatever. And in the shot process, the timing of it might change a little bit, but the order of the shot process remains the same. So the fundamentals are the same. They're resistant to changes in situations if you organize them the right way. So it'd be great if you could always rely on trigger, like that way, because and you could just focus on other things. So I'll say if I had to pick one, I would pick trigger, I think.
Okay.
Even though I'm pretty good at trigger, you can always be better.
Well, I have some questions that I wrote down based on your answer, but the only one I'm going to ask you right now is when you said, the situation determines how fast your trigger finger moves. You're still pulling the trigger roughly the same speed at 5 or 50. But your follow-up shot's going to be a little bit slower, I assume. Or are you mechanically slowing the speed of the trigger pull?
So there's two parts to how fast you shoot, right? So how fast you pull the trigger. One is the hesitation parts, right? So if you pull the trigger, boom, and then if you were to stop and wait for something, which people do, like there's some really good USPSA shooters that think that the way to do it is to go boom and then reset it really slowly, click, and then that I think is completely wrong. It's because there's this hesitation. The amount of time it takes you to start the trigger moving, that amount of time could theoretically be zero without impacting your fundamentals at all. And then the amount of time it takes you from when the shot breaks to when you reset it could theoretically be zero, or you want to approach zero. So in other words, boom, and it's reset like instantaneously. Like while you're still in recoil, that trigger ideally would be reset and you're back on it again. Okay, so that's how you reduce time. So it's in that context, it's if you have a trigger moving at a given pace, right? If you just shorten how much it has to move, and it doesn't ever stop, it's just going. But you can shoot really fast. If it's only moving back and forth like a millimeter or two, and it's moving, say it's moving a meter a second, which doesn't sound very fast. But if it's only going a millimeter, that's 1,000 shots a second, right?
Yeah, I mean it would be
right?
It'd be a crap ton.
So if you reduce hesitation, you reduce the split times, like just by reducing hesitation. Now the other side of it is how fast your trigger finger is moving. So let's say if you're shooting like a double action or something that has a really long roll, if there is a lot of movement there, then there's some situations where that trigger finger is going to move faster. So if I have a double action like an M9 or something, and the first shot's double action, the pace at which the rate at which the trigger moves for the first shot, if say it's really close, might be a lot faster than if I had more time for the first shot. So that the how fast your trigger finger moves can also vary. But those are the two components that determine basically what your split times are. Is reducing the hesitation components and then increasing speed. And they're independent. They, both of those can have effects, but reducing the hesitation components, I think, has outside effects because that doesn't impact accuracy negatively. Where if you increase your trigger finger speed, then that can potentially have more accuracy implications, more negative accuracy implications. And what those are that your grip, like I said before, your grip aligns your sights, right? So if I was to ask you, what is the only way to pull the trigger bad? Like by definition, what's the only way to pull a trigger bad? We have these definitions of trigger control, like pull the trigger straight to the rear in such ways to not disturb sight alignment. That's bullshit, because that assumes you can get sight alignment and you can hold it, which you can't. If you, like I said before, if you think your sights are aligned, you're not looking hard enough. So you can't get sight alignment. You can't hold it. It is a dynamic situation, whether you're shooting slow fire or whether you're shooting while moving laterally on moving targets with a gas mask on, going through an obstacle course or something, like the worst possible case. Everything is always moving. It's just moving to different degrees, right? So sight alignment's not a given. It's something you have to fight for. And then pulling it straight to the rear. Why do we say that?
Well, you're hoping to not disturb the sights.
Okay, but what if you pulled it to the side? Could that not disturb the sights?
Yeah, and it can. Yes, it would, and it would also possibly change where. So therefore, it would change where your impact would be.
I would argue that it doesn't have nearly as big of an effect if you have this one thing, which I'll talk about later, accounted for with your trigger system. And that, so if you zoom out to Olympic level free pistol, which is the most accurate pistol sport that there ever has been, as far as the accuracy levels that are required, or precision levels, or whatever you want to call it. You have to hit like a circle. It's about this big at 50 meters, one-handed with an iron sight 22 at 50 meters, right? So that's like 54 yards or something.
I would call that precision accuracy.
Yeah,
because it's a combination of accuracy and precision.
It is very difficult. You have to shoot a really small group, and you have to be zeroed, right?
Oof.
So, they have on those pistols, let's say the pistol's pointing in this direction, you can push the trigger this way and it goes off. You can adjust the trigger to figure out which way that you have to move the trigger relative to the barrel to get it to go off. And you adjust it relative to whatever is your personal grip and where your trigger finger wants to go. But it's independent of like straight to the rear. It doesn't have to be straight to the rear. Now, the reason why you can do that is the reason why people say, I think, I don't presume to know what other people think necessarily unless they tell me. But I think the reason why people say you have to pull the trigger straight to the rear is because if you are pulling a trigger and all of a sudden the sear breaks, so the hammer starts to fall or the striker starts to move forward, what happens is you have a weight on the trigger. You're adding a moment to the pistol or the rifle. It's a less of an effect with the rifle because you have more points of contact, but it's still there. And then it's removed. So if I was to have you, say, if you were to, to hold this and I was to push on it, right? And then I was to release it. So I'm pushing on it and then I release it. There's this moment. It moves like in this direction, right? Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah,
so
your image is frozen, so I have to imagine what you're saying.
Is actually a trigger, right? So this is not a 300 PRC. It's your trigger. If I'm adding a weight to it, right, and then all of a sudden the weight's removed, did you see how it moves up?
Yeah. I mean, I know what you're saying.
That's what your pistol does. You're adding a weight to a moment. You're adding force to your trigger, right? Physically.
Right.
If that trigger breaks and there's movement afterwards, it's like me coming up to the pistol and going flick. So there's a couple ways to try to reduce that. One is what most people do. I want a lighter and lighter trigger. Because if I have a lighter trigger, say if my trigger is only 1 pound, now I only have a 1 pound flick. If I have a
Right.
4-pound trigger, now I have a 4-pound flick. So that's
Correct.
one way. I would say that is, to be insulting, I would say that is the amateur way. The better way, the professional way of doing it, which I don't think most people do, at least not in America, is you set your over travel stop. You set your over travel stop so it goes click and it stops absolutely. There's
Right.
no movement afterwards. Now, I've heard really good shooters, or some really good shooters, think that I want, have all this space after the trigger for over travel. That way, if I get on it, I don't hit a stop. But you getting on it and hitting a stop is going to be way less of an input to the pistol than you adding 4 pounds and then taking it away with no over travel stop. So the way to fix that is with an over travel stop. That's for precision marksmanship, or for shooting slow fire or whatever. For shooting fast, what that also does is, now, remember we talked about having your trigger go, to be able to shoot faster, you have less hesitation. You want that trigger finger to move less of a distance. If you have an
Right.
over travel stop that's set about absolute, I mean, not absolute, but it's,
Let's say a
couple
millimeter
thou.
past
It's
breaking. Yeah.
where it'll break consistently without stopping it, but it doesn't go too far afterwards. Now you're squeeze, boom, squeeze, boom. Instead of going squeeze, or squeeze, boom, and then having to reset this, further than what you have to. What the over travel stop does it makes you where you have to reset that minimal distance. It allows you to shoot faster. It allows you to shoot more accurately. I think a lot of shooters out there, even good shooters, just don't understand the concepts behind it and why an over travel stop is so important. I first discovered it in '98 at Inter Service. I was learning how to do my own trigger jobs, and I had this discovery that on a 1911, your over travel stop bears against your magazine release, which it's obvious, it wasn't really a discovery. But what the discovery portion of it was when you change magazines, your over travel amount might change if your magazine release isn't fit tightly. So then I went to the Marine Corps truck and I went through every magazine release they had, probably about 30 or 40 of them. And I found the one that fit in my pistol the tightest. And the next day I tied the Inter Service 45 match record with an 893, which was Herschel Anderson's, who has the record. He had more X's. I'm pretty sure he had more X's, like 99% confident. When he set the national record of a 2680, he had an 893 in the 45 match at Inter Service. So I did that because all of a sudden now my slow fire scores got way better, just by having that one little fix of having close to zero over travel. So now I'm really picky, and for a number years since then, I'll actually have an Allen wrench on the firing line with me at Camp Perry. And for the slow fire stages, I'll have it set exact where there'll be times where I have to go up and back it out a 16th of a turn because it was that exact. Now for timed and rapid fire, I want to favor on reliability a little bit more, so I'll back it out like an eighth of a turn or something. So I have a little bit more over travel. It's not as punishing timed and rapid fires. It's only at 25 yards, and the X ring is really big at 25. I mean, relative to what it is at 50.
So would you recommend, now when you were on the other night with everybody, you talked about shooting bullseye and then practical in the same weekend and going back to bullseye all in the same weekend?
In the same day.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, same day.
Yeah. So like at Inter Service, the way you do it at Inter Service, the way you used to do it, I haven't done it in a while, is you'd shoot the 900 point aggregate individual match, first and second relay, and the good shooters are on first relay usually. Then there's a break, lunch or whatever, and you come back and shoot team matches in the afternoon. And most people, like on the Marine Corps team or even the Army team, the team matches are the important thing, right?
Yeah.
So between the two, I would go over to the action pistol range at the Army Marksmanship Unit, and I would shoot action pistol with their shooters, like with Julie and Max Michel and these other really good shooters that they had shooting action pistol, and I would play around with them, shooting as fast as I could, and then I'd come back, and there were 2 years in a row I came back and I shot a 300 in the 45 team match after shooting action pistol. So the point of that was not necessary to brag. It was just to say that if you organize the fundamentals correctly, or at least in a order, there is a way to organize the fundamentals in your head and think about how to shoot a pistol where there's no negative implications for shooting different disciplines. It doesn't, like, I didn't get bad trigger control all of a sudden because I shot some USPSA, or, you know, it doesn't mess up everyone said that's going to mess up your trigger control. Like, well, no, it doesn't, because I pull it the same way. And the other funny thing was, at the same time, was rapid fire and free pistol. Those are two Olympic pistol disciplines, and they're polar opposites. Well, not really, but they are. One is you're shooting 5 separate targets, starting with your arm at a 45-degree angle. The targets basically turn. I mean, they're this lights nowadays, and they're scored electronically, but historically, the targets will, you know, they're edge and they'll face, and you can't lift your arm from a 45-degree angle until they face. And when they do, every 3/4 of a meter, there's a different target with basically the same size scoring rings as NRA bullseye, right? So your 10 ring is about like that big, right? At 25 meters now. So 5 of them. Targets face. Then you can lift your arm and shoot one with an iron sight 22 pistol. Shoot one shot in each of the 5 targets in 4 seconds. So that's pretty fast. I'm compared to the other top shooters in the world, probably compared to the top 100 in the world, actually, I have like the slowest first shot. Like, my first shot's around 2 seconds, which means that my other 4 shots are within 2 seconds. So in my splits on the electronic targets, you can read them. They're about a half second. You know, if I'm shooting really well, my first shot's good, then my splits are about 0.54 seconds apart. For a different target. It's still shooting 10s. You know, well, hopefully, obviously not all the time. But when I'm shooting well, I'm still shooting 10s. Now go over to free pistol, and back then it was 2 hours to shoot 60 shots, slow fire, all slow fire from a single shot 22. In my free pistol had a 10-gram trigger, which is probably light. Lighter than what it should be.
Keith, I did the math on that. That's a 0.35 ounces trigger pull.
I told you it was light.
That is the epitome of light.
yeah. When people say they have a light trigger, they haven't played around with a free pistol.
No.
Once a free pistol trigger is set, you don't point it up in the air. You don't tilt it sideways. Your attention level has to go up a notch or two, because now you don't bump it against the table or it'll go off. If you shake it too fast, it might go off. So, again, mine was probably a little bit too light. I probably would have shot. And I shot good. I've won nationals like once or twice with free pistol. I've shot, okay in international competition, in World Cups, like upper 550s. I think like 560, but never like in the 570s area where it takes to be like a great free pistol shooter internationally. In America, I was good at free pistol, but internationally, I wasn't that good. You know, maybe top 30 or something, maybe top 50. But anyway, rapid fire, we have half-second splits, and you have free pistol where you have 2 minutes a shot, basically, right?
Yes.
To me, the way I thought about trigger, they were both identical. And I say that because the way I thought about it was, with a 10-gram trigger, once I apply pressure to that trigger, I have a very short period of time. There is a period of time. I have to be able to switch mentally from activating trigger, because anybody who says trigger is subconscious, just go to a murder trial. Trigger is not subconscious. Trigger control is a conscious act. Ask any murder, trial prosecutor, right? So you have to you have that conscious act of starting the trigger, and then you have to be able to switch gears as fast as you can to trying to align your sights. Because as soon as you start thinking about trigger control, your sight alignment starts to go weird a little bit. And you can see that if you're on the ISMIT, like in the Marine Corps, or the EST 2000 in the Army, which are both the same systems, the FAT system, or the SCAD or NOPTEL, or one of the precision ones where they have a little infrared laser or camera or something, and it shows what your hold is. You can see like this hold that will develop, and then you'll see a loop. And what that loop is right when they started trigger control. Because their sight alignment gets a little bit worse. So you have to start trigger control and then switch back to trying to align your sights as best as you can, or getting the dot in the middle, or whatever the case may be. So that's a really short period of time. In rapid fire, it's less than half a second. In free pistol, it's less than half a second. So to me, trigger control in both of those two disciplines, having a, you know, my rapid fire trigger is probably about 1,200 grams, and my free pistol trigger was 10 grams. But the time it takes between the amount of time I have to switch gears mentally from starting trigger control to aligning my sights is about the same in both of them. So that's why, to me, they were the same. Again, the situation determines what this guy does. And then everything else is just you're trying to align the sights as best as you can. And in rapid fire, you are applying full trigger control. Your trigger is moving back as fast as what it ever moves back, halfway between targets. You're not even on the next target yet. You're in full recoil, and you've already started squeezing again for the next shot at full pace. Otherwise, you run out of time. You don't have enough time. Otherwise, you get there and you can smack the hell out of it, and you shoot a bad shot. Because if you smack the trigger, you know the two things happen when your trigger control exceeds your ability to think. One is that when the shot breaks, you're thinking about trigger and not sight alignment. And like I've said before, the pistol is a very, very jealous entity. If you're not giving her all of your attention, or particularly sight alignment, she'll let you know. So if you're thinking about trigger instead of sight alignment, that's going to affect things downrange. The other thing that happens is if your trigger finger is moving like jerkily or too quick or whatever, these other fingers, which their job is to align the sights, right? Their primary job of your grip is to align your sights. It is also to provide recoil control and stuff like that, right? And an anchor for your trigger finger. But these fingers are aligning your sights. With two hands, you have 9 fingers that are aligning your sights. Well, it depends how much you use your thumbs. But these fingers are aligning your sights. If these fingers fluctuate whatsoever as your trigger finger is moving, that is the definition of bad trigger control. So the definition of bad trigger control has actually little to do with your trigger finger. It's almost everything to do with these other fingers. These other fingers can't fluctuate pressures at all. So if they're fluctuating pressure, that means that your sight alignment is fluctuating. So that's why I'm a big advocate of dry firing with your eyes closed. If you dry fire with your eyes closed and you're focusing on just what the pressures of these fingers, if you try it out. So dry fire, I don't know, like 15 minutes a day with your eyes closed for a week. And at the end of the week, somewhere towards like day 5 or 6, you're going to say, damn it, Keith, I'm getting worse now. And now I feel all sorts of different things, happening in my grip. And the thing is, those things were happening before. It just takes a couple days to get sensitive enough to feel all these crazy fluctuations as your trigger finger is moving. Once you get that sensitivity built in, now you can start to address it and fix it. So now your grip is consistent and it's independent of your trigger finger. Right?
So is that how you got to the point you are then? Is dry firing with your eyes closed?
It is a component. So dry fire with your eyes closed, I think, is an incredible tool to improve trigger control. Incredible. It's the best one that I'm aware of. I don't know of anything else because it allows you to isolate that particular fundamental the most. I mean, you still have to incorporate it with grip because you can't have trigger without grip. But it isolates that the best. It's the best way to train trigger control that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So to backtrack a little bit, just because we were talking about fundamentals more. Remember, I said there's position, grip, trigger, and sights. So you have position, which is the fundamentals. If you think of a pyramid, that's your base of your pyramid, right? Again, whether it's prone, kneeling, around a corner, no matter whether you're moving, shooting laterally, that is your
still
position.
your base.
It's independent of your grip, and this should be obvious, right? So what your feet are doing is not affected by what your grip's doing. So if you're moving, it doesn't matter what your grip or trigger or sights are doing, right? It's just what your body's doing, right? And ideally, you want to build a wind and recoil resistant position. That's you use your biomechanical stuff to get better at to be more precise or whatever. Now grip is independent of trigger, which is what I was just saying. So your grip aligns your sights, your position controls sight pitch, your grip controls sight alignment. Your position is independent of your grip. Your grip is independent of your sights. What that means, your grip is independent of your trigger, which means that as your trigger's finger is moving, your grip does not fluctuate at all because it's independent of it. It has to be, right? Now, one step further up in the pyramid, you have trigger. And trigger is independent of the sights. And what that means is it's not linked to the sights. It is independent of the sights. It can affect the sights, most likely can affect the sights negatively. It's a lot easier for it to affect the sights negatively than it is to affect the sights positively. But it is independent. To do it right, it is independent of the sights. And to explain that, if you ask any good pistol shooter out there, they're going to say, the textbook says there's two types of trigger control. There is uninterrupted and interrupted. And they're going to say interrupted is bad, uninterrupted is good. If your trigger control is uninterrupted, that means by definition, your trigger has to be independent of your sights. Because if your sights are dictating what your trigger finger is doing, that is the definition of interrupted.
Right.
So if we get beyond
you're
the
going to
words,
hesitate.
if we get beyond the words of interrupted and uninterrupted and these things that would become like a dogma, and we look at what the meanings are, trigger independent of the sights. Now that gives us clarity at how to train better. Where if you just say it's uninterrupted, well, you can dry fire and focus on uninterrupted, which is a good thing to do. Dry fire with your eyes closed, and you can focus and make that your primary goal to make sure that once the pressure builds in the trigger, it builds at the same rate till the hammer falls. That is a really good drill for building trigger control that's uninterrupted. And I recommend you do that. I also recommend you also do times where, in probably the majority of the time, or at least 50%, where your primary goal, your mission statement is to make sure these other fingers aren't fluctuating pressure. And what you'll find out is uninterrupted trigger control. If your trigger control is uninterrupted, it makes it a lot easier to make these fingers not fluctuate. If these fingers, if your trigger control is interrupted, it is a lot easier for these fingers to fluctuate. Now,
Okay.
there is a time where your trigger finger has to be interrupted, and that's when you're shooting multiple shots because you have to reset the trigger, which is a type of interruption. So your trigger finger is going, and it has to go like this. Well, now it's really easy. It's really hard to get your trigger finger to reset and have these fingers not reset a little bit too, right? And you don't want them to. So that you can overcome that with training. Just takes a lot. And obviously, or it should be obvious, that the least amount of movement you have in your trigger finger, if you're going like this, it's going to be more likely to affect these other fingers than if you're just going back and forth like a couple of millimeters. And that's one of the advantages, like in USPSA, that a 1911 has over most other pistols, because most other pistols have a longer reset than what a 1911 has. A 1911 has a very, very short reset, and that's favorable. The reason why some shooters like Glocks over other triggers is Glocks happen to have a very positive reset. So both of those two things are really good. You want a positive reset and a short reset. Glocks have a very positive reset, just long. 1911s have, if you set them up right, they have the best of both worlds. They have a short reset and a positive one, which is why, with the exception of Eric Raffel, and any competition where 1911 is legal to compete in, it usually dominates. And Eric Raffel, of course, shoots a CZ
exception.
or Tangfolio or whatever, and he is the GOAT of USP or of IPSC.
IPSC, yeah. So let me ask you this, because I also shot Eastern and Far Eastern division matches, and I never did well with the pistol because I could never. Well, number one, I was in the grunts and we didn't use pistols, so I never practiced with it. Number two, as I told someone else, I've always had the problem of gripping to the point where the pistol shakes, and then other times I wouldn't grip it hard enough. So I never really determined exactly. To me, I always induce some type of shaking, it seems. So,
did you ever train?
No, not really.
Okay, well, I mean, like I don't run very fast. Well, how often do you run? I run once a year. Okay, well, you're probably not going to win the Olympics if you run once a year. My friend Paul Chilimo, he was a five. I think he runs longer distance now, but he was a 5K runner in the Rio Olympics. He ran the 5K, which is 3.1 miles. What's the fastest Marine Corps PFT you've ever heard of?
I knew of a guy who did it in 14:35.
That's fast. Chilimo was a minute faster.
Holy guacamole!
His third mile was 3:53. Was his third mile?
His third mile.
His third mile. Chalimo, along with most of the mid-distance runners, he trains 110 to 120 miles a week. And none of those miles are slower than a 5-minute pace.
My best long distance run, I'm going to call 12 miles long distance. I did in Okinawa. I did 12 miles, and I did it in 72 minutes flat. So I did a 6-minute pace over 12 miles.
That's good.
I was so bored. I was like, I will never run this far again in my life, and I never have. I have kept to my promise.
I ran the Marine Corps Marathon in 2000.
Nope, I will never ever.
Because I wanted a 96. I was there, so you get a free 96 if you run it, right? So
for those listening,
a
a 96 is 4 days off.
Slow, and then I went to West Virginia, went groundhog hunting as soon as it was over for the 4-day weekend. But my point about the running thing is you can't expect to do better without training. So there's not. I really reject this idea that there's natural shooters out there. And I reject it for personal reasons because I don't consider myself a natural shooter. I started out in the Marine Corps, and I was a high expert with a rifle. I had the base high in 29 palms way back when, and like 95 or something. And I went to the pistol range, and just like I did before, so before the rifle range, I was friends with an armor, or a couple of the armors. And I checked out my rifle at lunch, and I'd dry fire and get my positions and stuff for like an hour and a half at lunch, and then go back to work, right? Well, but when I finally got a chance to go to the pistol range as a corporal, which is kind of rare, I took advantage of it. I went to the armory, every day at lunch for 2 weeks prior, and dry fired, and did what everyone told me to do, and I was solid sharpshooter every day. And I shot solid sharpshooter on a course of fire that now I think is like ridiculously easy, like really not as easy as the new course of fire that the Marine Corps has, but it was pretty easy. And then like I said, my first division match, what I said earlier, I didn't do very good with the pistol. I did horrible. I remember aiming at the top right-hand corner of the 5 ring in rapid fire just to try to have all 10 shots somewhere in the scoring rings. And then, 2 years, what was it? 3 years later, I set the Western Division match record, and I think I had 100 on one of my rapid fire strings.
Wow.
With the same, M9 and stuff. So learning how to do things the right way makes a big difference. But knowing isn't enough. You have to train. And the way to get rid of shakiness, I think, a short is like I often joke, like unless you're like Michael J. Fox or have some type of condition, right? The way to get rid of shakiness is through holding drills. So a holding drill is basically you hold the pistol up, you build your position, whatever it is, one or two-handed or whatever your ideal position is that you built in your head to be biomechanically correct. And then you dry fire a shot. But now you're going to extend your follow-through, and follow-through is you are aligning the sights with the same intensity as if the shot hasn't happened yet. You're trying to align your sights. Your grip is exactly the same, with ideally no fluctuations. Your position is exactly the same. And by position, we want to really focus on in holding drills that to define it better, every angle of every joint in your body remains the same.
Including
and ideally,
your trigger
the
finger?
muscle tension, around those joints remains the same. So you are trying to grip for that, and you want to build up to 1 minute on, 2 minutes off. So that 1 minute on, you are gripping 100% and even harder, as hard as you possibly can. Every finger, pinky finger too, and you're going through your head and a grip harder, pinky finger too. Make sure your elbow's straight. Make sure your shoulder is tight and locked. Muscles are like, I often say that muscles are like lance corporals. If you don't tell them what to do, they'll do stuff on their own, right? So you go through and you tell everything in your body like what to do. Like you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and then you go back and you spend sights are aligned and pointed in the right direction, and then grip. Most of the holding drill was kind of focused on grip. Almost half of it is just on gripping harder. So if your tight grip's going to lock up your wrist, it locks up your elbow. It does handle a whole lot. You do that 1 minute on, 2 minutes off, 7 times. Now you and I are a little bit older now than what we used to be. I used to do that like every day, and like 1 minute on, 1 minute off, and that's kind of intense. 1 minute on, 2 minutes off is probably about right. Any more than 7 times is a point of diminishing returns, but you get positive returns up until about like set 6 at least. I used to say, like, if you're younger, you do that for a week, and at the end of the week, you'll be steady. You'll be able to grip it as hard as you can, and you'll be pretty steady. Maybe not like if you're shooting with a dot where the dot just stops. You might not be there yet. You can get there. You just keep on doing that, and you start training the right way, and you might incorporate some other things into it, which we'll talk about in a second, and you'll get that higher level of steadiness. But that's the first order of steadiness and recoil recovery, whether it's one-handed or two-handed. If you're older, like I'm older now, been injured a lot. I'm 50, almost 52, or almost 51, excuse me. So now I'd say like every other day, maybe like every third day, to do the real high intensity hold and drills. Now, once you do that for a week, I wouldn't do it for more than a week, maybe 2 weeks at the most. If you're doing it every other day, maybe 2 weeks. So no more than like 5 or 6 times that you're doing this, and then you switch to doing what I would consider a high precision dry fire shot. You try to dry fire on like on a small target or whatever, and then exaggerate your follow through. And you want to hold your follow through as long as you can before you get distracted, and then make a mental note of how long it took before you got. And I say distracted, I mean, so I'm up there and click, and there's a certain period of time, and everyone's aware of it, where their brain drifts a little bit. For most people, it's instant. Like as soon as it goes click, they're off to doing something else, right? But we want to extend that as long as we can, trying to and the idea is that because grip is independent of the trigger and trigger is independent of the sights, like we said before, now after it clicks, you're still trying to align the sights. So if I had like a camera or whatever that you're looking through, one of those things that they have, that YouTubers have or whatever, and I was to just looking at the video without sound, I shouldn't be able to detect when the click was. But most of the time, you'll see it, you'll have your set alignment, and it'll go click, and there'll be this movement afterwards. You're like, what the hell? I didn't tell you to move. Because your body tells you to move. Because it tells you to relax after the shots happened. The problem is that, like we used to teach in Marine Corps Table 2 marksmanship on the combat mindset class, you get, under high pressure situations, the order of events changes a little bit. You get tachypsychia, they talked about, which is speed of the mind in Greek. It's things can slow down or speed up, but basically your perception time will change a little bit. Under a high pressure situation, if you train yourself to go, let's say like 5 seconds of a hold and then you shoot and relax, in a match, it'll be 5 seconds and you shoot at 6 seconds, not 5 seconds. So right at 5 seconds, you have boom. And if you've ever shot before, like, where you try to be, really, precise, you'll have it where like, you're pretty good, and then it'll go boom. Like, what the hell? Like, it got bad right before I shot. And there's 2 reasons for that. Either one, it's you're thinking about trigger control and not sight alignment, and that's going to open it up, of course. The other cause of that is that you trained yourself to relax at a certain period of time. So you have to extend that. I'm a really big proponent of follow through. I know there's really good shooters out there. Brian Zins is one of them, who doesn't have any follow through at all. I think he'd be a lot better shooter if he had follow through, or used to have follow through back when he was shooting.
Right.
I think that would help him out a lot, get him to the next level, as it would for anybody. But the thing about follow through is that it's hard, and it's not fun. But I think it is the fastest way to improve hold, both rifle and pistol. I think it's not a lot of rifle shooters, are subscribe to this, but with my experience in service rifle, which I've shot enough of, that the fastest way to improve your hold is dry fire with lots of follow through, and try to keep that follow through absolutely perfect. Which it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be really bad. You're moving around and stuff. You're trying to keep it, as centered as possible for as long as possible. And then, so for this precision type of hold and drill, it's like the first 30 seconds or so is just trying to be as steady as possible. And then if you want, you can transition into gripping it as hard as you can, and then trying to be like acceptable amount of steadiness. You're trying to be steady, but the goal is to grip harder. But that first part now is your goal is to be as steady as possible, at least for the first part. And that's how you get your hold refined, where it gets really small. And that's how I've been able to, throughout the years, the times I don't, it's going to sound terrible. When I go to Camp Perry, I don't usually train for it. Not recently, because I shoot international. I'm shooting other stuff, or I have a full time job. But those times where I got my 2 or 3 weeks of training in, the only slow fire training I did was dry fire with holding drills, and I would do exactly what I just said. I would dry fire with a dot or whatever, and extend my follow through as long as I could before I had a mental distraction or whatever. And whenever I felt that mental disconnect, I would switch it to intensity hold and drill, where I grip it as hard as I possibly can for the rest of that minute. And I did that, and I was able to get where my dot within about 3 weeks. I got my dot would not every time, but it turns out most of the time would stop. And it's a lot easier to shoot an X at 50 when your dot doesn't move. Now, as soon as I start squeezing the trigger, the dot will move again, right? Because I stopped thinking about that a little bit. I had something, that was a little bit, dynamic to my grip. But if I wait, the dot will come back, right? As I have faith now, as I've done it enough times where I have faith that I can start trigger control. Now I just wait for it. And I wait for that proverbial surprise shot. And so it's moving around, and it'll go, ooh, and I wait. It'll happen. I just wait for it. It's just boom, and it's a surprise shot. It's a surprise not because it's a negligent discharge. It's a surprise as I'm not thinking about trigger control. Right. I'm not thinking about. I'm thinking about sights is what my primary focus is. I'm trying to all of my focus, all of my mental energy. I'm trying to put into sights, and boom, it'll break an X. Obviously, I don't do it right all the time. I'm not perfect. But when I do it right, and in those times I've won Camp Perry, I used to be the best short line shooter in America. Like where I was timed in rapid fire, I was really, really good. The times I've won Camp Perry, it wasn't because of my time in rapid fire. It's because of my long line, and I never trained long line. I only dry fire.
Interesting.
Okay, I hear you now.
You do?
Yeah. What'd you do?
I didn't do anything. I typed in a message, said it's working, meaning
Well,
the computer messing
now
with you is working.
Well, I guess the computer heard us, and it decided to stop. All right, now where were we again? Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a question that's okay. So I want to go back to the over travel stop. And do you think there is a benefit to using that in dynamic shooting, such as IPSC, IDPA, Bianchi, that type of thing?
Absolutely. So I will. Let me grab two examples. So here is there's a 9mm. Let me unscrew this thing all the way. Normal 9mm high cap, carry optics type of thing, right?
Okay.
1911, or 2011. This has no over travel stop in it. I could go get it. It's over there somewhere. But I have an old SVI. I love SVIs. They're still the best 1911s out there, I think. I have an old SVI high cap, and what I did was on that one back here, this is when I worked at SVI. Actually, I drilled and tapped the hole and put an over travel stop, and that made a big difference. I could shoot faster, and my accuracy levels went way up. So my group sizes went way down. This is this is my current bullseye pistol. There's some features on it I don't shoot bullseye with, because it's fun, right? I got like 1 million rounds of subsonic match 45 ammo, so of course I'm going to have a can on it, right? But if you look, so a normal over travel stop, what it does is you have with a 1911 at least, you have inside of the trigger bow, there's a set screw that bumps against your magazine release.
Okay.
On my plastic high caps, on my SVI 2011s, or they're the SVI high caps, they aren't really 2011s, but they're Sandy made the original 2011. With the polymer frames, what I would do is I would drill a hole in the front of this. I could get my Allen wrench in there and adjust it easy without having it stick the L side of it in there. Well, on this pistol, which is made from 3 Sigma out of Seattle, they make stuff for Blue Origin and Boeing most of the time, but they're making 1911 stuff now. But you can see right here, if I can point to it in the screen, where my camera is. See, there's that little set screw right there. There's a
Oh,
hole.
yeah.
What that is there's a piloted screw. So it's a big diameter and a small diameter on the inside. The small diameter goes in a parallel hole, and in between there's a tapered section, and that taper section bumps up against the trigger. So now the over travel adjustment on this guy is I turn that screw in, and it's a really really precise, robust stop. And as it goes in, that wedge moves like this, and the trigger is going. So let me see. The wedge is like this, and the trigger is going this way. I'm sorry. The wedge is like this, and the trigger wants to go back in this direction. So as I
Right.
screw it in, it prevents it from moving back a certain amount. So on that one, I can control the over travel a lot. So although the accuracy potential of both of these two pistols is mechanically the same, I shoot this one significantly better because of the over travel stop. As far as speed, my split times with the over travel stop are faster than what they are without an over travel stop on a 1911. On a Glock, obviously, it's going to be a lot slower. My trigger finger is pretty fast, even with IPSC, standards. I can outrun a 1911 government length slide. I have a hard time outrunning a commander length.
Mm,
Unlightened with a normal slide, I can outrun. I can pull the trigger fast enough where the slide is not reset all the way. But I can't do that without an over travel stop. With an over travel stop, I can. With a commander length, the slide velocity is fast enough where I don't think I can. Um, that doesn't mean I can shoot very accurately when I'm shooting like that, but I can get split times down, really really small, um, with an over travel stop. So yes, I think the only disadvantage to having your over travel set, really tight, is if it gets dirty, which guns tend to get dirty. You get a little piece of, dirt or something in there, with sand or whatever, it can bump up against it and then stop, and then your trigger stops, before the hammer falls. So
right.
anytime I want to put a priority on reliability over accuracy, what I'll do is I will back out the over travel screw, a eighth of a turn, or if it's really important, like a half a turn or something. So for a USPSA match, I'm going to have it backed out, at least a quarter turn from where it's like close to absolute perfect. But for bullseye slow fire, I'm going to have it where it's really, really, really close, within a couple thou. Um, Again, because in slow fire, if I get to the point where there's a piece of grip back there and it stops, I can stop, reset the hammer, and then
You
back it
have
out
time.
that eighth. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have time. Now, if I'm on a slow fire stage in bullseye and I'm running low on time, let's say I have 3 shots left in like a minute to shoot those 3 shots, I'm going to back the over travel screw out because I don't have time to, like, screw around. Um, because now I'm willing to give up a little bit of accuracy to favor, reliability. Um, and a real quick note on accuracy versus reliability. With the exception of that part, just because a pistol is accurate, it doesn't mean it's not reliable. Like, I think this is it right here. No, my hardball gun. I got guns all around me. Oh man, I'm sorry
Wait,
that the grips are off of it, but this is my baby. This is my old SVI 6-inch government. Um, Imagine there's grip panels on it and stuff like that, right?
okay.
But this guy, I have well over 200,000 rounds of 185 grain jacketed hollow points through this pistol.
Whoa.
It still groups under with match ammo, with good ammo. It has to have good ammo, of course. It still groups under 1 inch groups at 50 yards, 4 10-shot groups. It's never had a malfunction.
Never.
Never.
How many barrels has that thing seen?
The original, everything is original on this except for the dot, which I have to change. If it's an ultra dot, I got to change it out like every year, it seems like. And the hammer and sear. I'm probably the most picky person on trigger control or on triggers in the world. Or if I'm not, I'm definitely in the top 10 as far as picky. So at like Camp Perry or a big competition, I would do a trigger job every single night. And the reason why I
Good
started doing
Lord.
trigger jobs is because if you want something done right, do it yourself. Took me a long time before I got as good as, the likes of like Ken Fenema or Mike Curtis, who are like, and Curtis is now building again. He is the bullseye gunsmith god. Um, and I learned a lot from both of those two. But now I do a trigger job.
every night because I want that hammer and sear surface to be absolutely perfect. So what happens is you have your hammer and sear, and in 1911 was designed, in 1911, designed as a combat, firearm. It wasn't designed to have a great trigger. It turns out that they have the best trigger. They can have the best triggers of any pistol out there for the most part, other than like Olympic level 22 pistols, maybe, or air pistols. And even then, I try to get my Olympic Pardini trigger to feel like my 1911 triggers when they're set up well. Um, the problem is the hammer and sear geometry. Um, that's even with the most expensive, really really hard steels that they use in the hammers and sears. You can get in aftermarket parts or in factory SVIs. Um, the surfaces will round off at the microscopic level after some period of time. There has to be a little bit of rounding, right? They aren't going to be exactly 90 degrees, right? But you want to approach that. But even as you approach that, so as that sear is moving like this, well, the pressure remains the same on it. And it's a lot of pressure on the hammer and sear on a 1911 compared to like, a better design trigger. Um, so when it gets to the very end, there's like, thousands of pounds of pressure on that, little microscopic surface. So that surface will start to like round off. So every day at Camp Perry, when I want to have the absolute best precision, uh, I would do a trigger job. Either I'm changing the hammer out, or I'm always polishing the sear, getting that edge sharper again. I look at it like it's a knife, and if you use a knife, the knife edge gets a little bit dull a little bit, and you want to polish it off again. I keep about the same angle. Once I find the angle that I like, I keep it because it has the right feel characteristics I have. And when it feels right, if you're a high level shooter, when the trigger feels right, everything will be inside call. I'm not saying you should call your shots in pistol. I don't think you should, but what it means is that if you shot and it feels like it breaks out, it'll always break a little bit inside of what you thought it did. So the pistol will always almost magically shoot a little bit better than you thought it did if you have a really good trigger. So that's obviously a really positive thing. So that's why I do trigger jobs on them every night. And I say the geometry is wrong. So if you look at like an M16 or M4 or like an AR-15 with the mil spec triggers, the geometry is similar to that of a 1911. So there's a lot of pressure on the hammer and sear surface. So if you were to polish them up on a jig or something, it wouldn't last that long. You can put grease on it, which helps it last a lot longer. The Molly grease or one of the other greases. Um, but they don't last forever. But then if you get like a Geisley trigger, or like, which is patterned off the old Krieger Milazzo triggers, which is patterned off of the M1 Grand trigger. The M1 Grand trigger, what they did was they put the hammer and sear surface really far away from the pivot point. So now there's less pressure on it. So there's more movement on the hammer, across the hammer and sear, for to gain the same amount of results. Like if you have an angle that's like this, well, if you're down here close to the pivot pin, well, it's a really short distance to move across. But if you move it up here for that same angular amount of motion you have, it crosses a lot more. So that the 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 forces are spread out more. The surfaces will last longer, which is why triggers like the Geisley triggers nowadays and the modern two-stage triggers for AR-15s have that the hammer and sear surface is a lot further away from the pivot point of the trigger to help them last longer. And if you look at like modern day match 22 pistols, they do the same thing. Where
So you
like on a Pardini, the trigger will last a lot longer than what it does on any 1911.
you just said something I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, which is don't call your shots in pistol. But what about dynamic shooting where makeup shots are allowed?
Well, most of the time in dynamic shooting, you have audible feedback, right? If you're shooting on steel, if you're shooting on paper, it's a little bit different. We'll get to that in a second. Um, the reason why I say don't call your shots in pistol is the human brain operates at somewhere around 120 something bits per second of conscious thought, not gigabytes or terabytes, but bits per second of conscious thought. That can be thought of as your spotlight of focus. And instead of thinking about bits per second, think about it like lumens from a flashlight, right? So you have like 125 lumens of what you can spend conscious energy on. It takes about 60 to track a conversation, which is why on a clear head, you can follow two conversations at once. But if you're thinking about something else, you can't follow two conversations at once. Have you ever noticed that? And you
Yes.
can't track three conversations. It exceeds the ability of the human mind.
Uh, Something else, if you're driving, have you ever been driving on the phone and you're talking you're driving your car and you're on the phone talking to somebody and you say, hey, I have to call you back. I'm in traffic. I can't.
Yes.
Now you're using more of you need more focus on the driving part of it to be able to drive, and you can't follow the conversation anymore.
Right.
Aligning your sights takes probably somewhere around 80 bits per second, which means you can't align your sights and have a conversation at the same time. Pulling the trigger, starting the movement of the trigger takes a certain amount of bits per second or a certain amount of conscious thought, which distracts, it eats away from that sight alignment conscious thought, right?
Okay.
Calling your shots also takes a certain amount of focus away from you. So it eats away from your ability to align your sights. Now, in action shooting, that is an acceptable compromise sometimes because you do need to know if you need to take follow-up shots. But if you spend too much energy on where your shots go, you'll miss the shots that are coming or you'll be slow. So, and you might have noticed that.
Mm.
So the fastest way to shoot is just obviously just don't miss, right? Like just to shoot the shots and shoot it clean. Obviously, that's what we all try to do. But
Right.
I often use with calling your shots. I use this old joke that I heard on the Marine Corps shooting teams. You might have heard it because it was from your generation or maybe even before. There was this a captain in the Marine Corps rifle team and an old master guns. So it's gonna be funny if there's a master guns involved. Um, and the master guns goes to the captain like, "Hey, sir, I bet you a case of beer I can take this M14 and range for the 1,000-yard line, and I can call every shot for value and o'clock where it hits on the target. Every shot for all 10 shots standing. I'm not saying I'm going to shoot all tens, but I can say I can call the value of the shot and where it hits on the target, or what 12 o'clock, 9 o'clock, or whatever." The captain's like, "I'll take that bet." Master Guns gets out there. It's an M14, so you have your elbow like all high like this when you shoot an M14. So like this, and he's like, "Bam, miss at 12. Bam, miss at 12. Bam, miss at 12." The point of the story is you can call your shots all day long. You'll just call them bad. You'll just be shooting bad shots. So there are times when the call will come to you. You're not chasing it. So through training, you'll shoot and you'll know it broke here. Like there are times, when I'm shooting well with a 45, which hasn't been for a number of years, where I'm like, oh, that one broke. That was an X at 3 o'clock. And if it comes up an X at 9 o'clock, I'm putting a click on. Or actually, if it's just left or right, I'll probably just cant the gun like 10 degrees and left or right because that's worth a 10-degree cant's worth about an inch at 50. So that's more of a reliable adjustment than clicking on a sight. But I'll make that adjustment if I now. But there are other times I shoot like I don't know where it went. I don't care. I don't care if I know where it went. I just care that hopefully it's in the middle. If I did everything right, then it is in the middle. Doesn't matter if I knew it was in the middle or not. Calling your shots, I think, I don't think it has any utility for juniors. I think when you're starting out, it's a very bad thing. Like keeping a data book, I think with rifle shooting is probably kind of dumb. Even though I grew up doing that, like in the Marine Corps, we were taught in boot camp. I still have a lot of my rifle data books from back in the day, from division matches, Marine Corps championships, and other service rifle matches I shot back before I had the audacity to listen to people who were really, really good that say don't keep a data book because it's a distraction. Uh, because if say if you're prone, why would you call your shot a 9 at 3? Why did you break it if it was a 9 at 3, right? Like why would you do that? Just don't do that. You don't need to write that down and reinforce that bad habit. Standing is a different story, but it's not like you had a lot of control over it. The only utility I can see for calling your shots is in the presence of wind, right? So if you're shooting and there's wind out there for rifle, we're talking about like at distance, probably past 200, and like that broke center and it comes up at 3. Well, there's probably wind out there that you might not have seen, or maybe you didn't give it enough wind. If you call it center and it comes up at 3, if you call it at 3 and it comes up center, well then even though it was an X and it was a center shot, but it broke at 3, it might be because of wind. You might have just got lucky. So
Right.
calling your shots in that with a rifle has that potential utility as long as it's not a distraction to the shot process. And it's really hard. It takes experience and training to get to the point where you can call shots to where it's not a distraction to the shot process. Another really poignant example of calling your shots is in international rapid fire. So, which is what I do, which applies to USPSA as well. If I'm coming up on my first target in 8 second series and I shoot and then I'm like, oh my, that first shot was bad. It broke over here. It's going to be a 9 at like 3 o'clock. And then but the rest of the shots were good. If it's an 8 second series, I'll look and my first shot might be a 10 at 3 instead of a 9 at 3. It was a little bit inside and like, oh, it caught. But my second or third shot was now a 9, and I thought it broke good. If it's a 6 second series, it'll be my fourth shot. If it's a 4 second series, it'd be my fifth shot. Why? Because there's a lag to that call. And now when you're calling it, it's distracting you from actually shooting. So now, even though I thought I did everything right on that other target, because I was thinking about the call, I wasn't. I didn't give enough focus to trying to align my sights. And I didn't see that they were misaligned a little bit in one direction, or I was a little bit off. And then it broke in a different area, and I wasn't aware of it because I was trying to call my shots. So I think calling your shots can be very dangerous. There's a time and place for it, but it really comes with training, where you have to have the discipline and the experience to be able to do it without it affecting you negatively. And usually, when I say what I mean is that it comes naturally. Like it'll come to you, and you don't apply any judgment to it. You're disciplined enough, you're trained enough where it'll come to you, and then sometime later you can like, oh, this was there. And if you don't remember it, it's okay. You're not upset because you didn't remember it. Because then it becomes a priority to remember the shot instead of to shoot a clean shot. It's much more important to shoot a good shot than to know where a potentially bad shot went.
So if
In
you're
my opinion.
not okay, if you're not shooting bullseye, if you are shooting practical, and you're moving through a stage, do you just make up a shot when you're on paper now, where you're like that there's something wrong with that shot? It registered wrong when you pulled the
Yeah.
trigger? Do you just
Yeah.
automatically?
You can allocate yourself a couple, like a tenth of a second or whatever, usually like in a transition or something, or like before you move from a position to another position. You can There is a point where you can, revisit that. But there's other times that, I learned this from, when I shot with Taryn Butler, um, who, he was really good at, 3-gun back in the day. And he would throw shots like a lot. There's other people. I mean, he was, there would be like a really far away shot that was hard. And Terrence's not the most accurate shooter out there. He's one of the least accurate, but he's really fast. Um, and he would just launch a shot in that general direction and take the time penalty because he was so much faster, everywhere else. So the point is that, if you're doing things right, half the time, if you call the shot bad, it probably still caught or there's a 50-50 chance that, that it caught. So before the stage starts, I would probably, do a quick strategy session and say, well, is it worth it putting any energy into trying to call my shots, or just go as fast as I can and be in the middle as best as I can?
And live with the
A lot, a
result.
lot,
Yeah.
a lot of times, because there's other times where you might call it, like a good shot, and it was a miss, right? So by that logic, you should stop after every time you shoot before you move, and stop and look down range to see if all your shots are in the middle. And you're not going to do that, of course. With steel, it's a little bit easier, but like if you see, good shooters, they miss a plate on a rack, they don't come back for it immediately. They'll finish the rack and then come back for it, because it's
Right.
faster that way. Otherwise, if you try to do it immediately, it's going to slow you down, and then the opportunity to miss more. If you're thinking about the missed shot, you're more likely to miss other shots. So we want to try to plan for success to the highest degree possible. Now, I'm more interested in, like, how does this apply to like real life? And real life is, if the bad guy's still moving, then you give him a couple more, a couple more shots.
Right.
Um, so it doesn't matter if it was a good shot or not. It just matters if the threat is no longer a threat in real life. So real life has that kind of advantage. Um, as far as calling shots are concerned. I mean,
Right.
there's also times where you'll shoot a shot, and like, oh man, I messed up on that one. Like there was an obvious mistake. And then you can be ready for like a follow-up shot. Like in the role, if you're like a sniper or something, you might not have the opportunity, depending on what distance you're at and flight time and stuff like that.
Well, now since you brought that up again, snipers and stuff like that, I think now might be a good time you went to Ukraine.
I did twice.
Okay. And what was your role? Were you vacationing?
It was really pretty, and they fed us really well.
You're
So
vlogging.
actually, so the first time I came back, and it was like a couple of days later. I went and competed at Camp Perry. And the next time I was in um, Baku, Azerbaijan, shooting at the World Shooting Championships, and I went directly from Baku. Well, went from Baku to Frankfurt to like Wrocław, Poland, or something, and then got on a train for like 2 days and went to the front part of the eastern part of Ukraine. So it still took me almost 3 days to get there. But I went right from the World Championships to Ukraine. Um, so I mean, I thought I had a good time. I liked it a lot. It was important to me for a couple reasons. I did not join the military because I wanted to compete. The Army Marksmanship Unit has a lot of soldiers who were like junior national championships, or junior national champions, and they are really good or something, and the Army Marksmanship Unit recruits them into their program. They have a few people from like Ranger Battalion, who will go over as an instructor slot for like 2 or 3 years to the Army Marksmanship Unit, and they either go back to Ranger Battalion or some of them stay and then end up, finishing out their careers at the AMU. But the majority of them are, come on with a contract, or they came on exclusively just to shoot and not do any real military stuff.
Like
That was
Max and
not me.
Julie. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not just to pick on them. I mean, the great majority of the unit and most
Yes.
of the top shooters are
Those
like
are
that.
just two examples. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm friends with both of those people. They're both good. I like Max a lot. He is really good. Uh, his trigger control's a little bit off, you know. He's like the Daniel Horner type, where he'll go like this and go whack, and he's like real slow. What are you doing? Like the speed, you get it backwards. You go this slow, back slow, and forward fast. I mean, and like but when he tries, maybe he's better at that now. Um, yeah, and I've shot with him before, where we were like, if we were close, he would destroy me. We back up like 10 meters, and I could beat him. Um, but I need that little bit of extra precision, or I'm not going to catch up to him, right? Up close, he's an absolute badass, and he trains all the time. Just to talk about Max for a second, he watches like he is a professional. Like at least back in the day, I can't speak to him now. And now he's really mature and team leader and all this other stuff. But he used to study game footage, so he'd watch all these matches of Eric Raffel, right, and other top IPSC shooters. And he did a lot of dry fire, a whole bunch of magazine changes. He was a student of the game. I'm sure he still is. I have a lot of respect for him. Um, I'll bust his ass one handed or whatever, but or for precision, but for IPSC, USPSA, and anything, he is a student of the game. He works really hard. Um, but anyway, back to Ukraine, I think, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how we
Yeah.
got off on Max Michel. Uh, uh, yeah, so I went over there as to teach a sniper school, and I did that not like a formal school. It was we had like a week or two or whatever, and we had like classes, and we did stuff and had range time, and we do things like that. I also taught a lot of entry level guys. In entry level guys, I mean like like a baker and a farmer who were picked up off the street a couple days before. I'm talking like a 40, 50 year olds that were like you have to go through 3 phases of boot camp in 3 days, and they were off to the front a couple days later. Yeah, so that was eye opening and rewarding, and then disheartening too, because like there was this one group of guys I shot, and there's some young guys that were like scared shitless, and some old guys that were really motivated, but they were like in their 50s. Um, and you had to teach them things like when you change magazines, duck. Like, don't stand up to change magazines. I mean, you laugh, but like if you've never shot a rifle before, and that's what
Right.
that's
You're
what you have
just
to
going to
deal with.
stand there.
Yeah. Um, so like, how to get behind cover, just really, really basic marksmanship stuff. And then 2 days later, like, three-quarters of those guys were all dead.
Ugh,
So yeah.
damn.
Um, and then I also got to work with the International Legion a little bit. Some of those guys are really cool, really badass. Other guys, there's a lot of guys that are like the guys that would wash out in the U.S. military because they were too aggressive. They were too
Mm,
crazy. Going out and drinking or doing drugs or whatever. And but warriors, right? And in fact, one of them had a critique of me and my team, which the other guys on my team got upset with it, but I was like, he's spot on. He called us war tourists because they were out there since the beginning. They've been fighting since they were there, not for a month or two at a time. They were there for years, and
right.
and they were right. And my motivation was the whole time I was shooting. And I wanted to be a sniper, first and foremost, and I wanted to be a military person, right? And I got good at shooting, and then like, well, I remember. I was in Camp Pendleton and I was WSQ, right, in swim qual, which I liked that because it's like being, a distinguished rifleman. Once you're distinguished with a rifle or pistol, you never have to qualify rifle or pistol ever again. You're considered expert, right, or above.
Right.
And in swim qual, if you're WSQ, then you never have to qualify again. I still would every year just because it was fun. Um, but because I was the only one in my battalion in Third Marines who was WSQ outside of their recon platoon. Um, I got a quota to scuba school, and I had the opportunity to be the only person in my MOS who had a scuba bubble, which I thought was really cool, and I wanted to do that. Or I could go to division matches and be the only person in my MOS who's distinguished.
Oh
So I,
boy.
I so I researched it, and there was more scuba bubbles out there than what there was distinguished shields. So I was like, well, I'm going to pick
Mm,
distinguished. So I went that route, and then and I got to the point, later on. So we didn't talk about this before, but 2000 came and left, and I was up for reenlistment in Quantico, and everybody who reenlisted from Whippets Train Battalion Quantico got orders to recruiting duty, and I dreaded the idea of that. I did not want to go to recruiting duty. MSG duty, maybe drill instructor, but not recruiting duty, anything but that. And I really had no desire to go back to the fleet because as a staff sergeant in the fleet in my MOS, I would have been behind the desk. I wouldn't have got to play like I was a tow gunner and be on a turret most of the time when we went to the field and did stuff. And I really enjoyed this. I wanted to be a grunt. Uh, so I got out of the Marine Corps. I went to college. Um, and at the same time, I joined the Army Reserve. I picked the Army Reserve over the Marine Corps Reserve because the Army Reserve shot AFSAM, the Armed Forces Skilled Arms Meet, the combat shooting, NATO championships, which I really liked. I was as far as I know, I'm the only Marine ever to have won that. Um, and I've won that several times. I like that style of shooting a lot. Um,
but when
and
you
then
say the Keith,
armed,
when you say the only Marine, were you actually on active duty with the Marines
yes,
or
and
for?
yeah,
Oh,
and
okay.
in fairness, in 2000, Marine Corps Team Scarlet crushed AFSAM. We had first, second, and third individual positions. It was me, John Ennis, and then Poe had come in first, second, and third. Bethards, I think, was like fifth or sixth. He was really good, but we were the Scarlet Team, and we dominated. We destroyed it, and I won almost every single match. On the individual level, and we won, I think, every team match. We really whooped ass. Um,
Hmm.
anyway, um, then the Marine Corps stopped going to AFSAM because they wanted to shoot bullseye year round and didn't want to shoot combat anymore. And then they lost both service rifle and service pistol because of that, because they didn't shoot what was relevant. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion that we talked about earlier a little bit.
Right.
I think it's important to do both because it shows the relevance of the precision stuff. But anyway, so then the middle of my second semester in college was September 11th. I'm in the Army Reserve. Then I tried to get back in the Marine Corps, and they're like, traitor. That was like they were not interested. And even going active duty in the Army took me 2 years because I was
Whoa.
prior enlisted. They want, even during the surge, it took 2 years because they wanted to hire some guy off the street and pay him as a private instead of paying me as a staff sergeant. So then I ended up,
Oh,
by the time I got on active duty, I went from staff sergeant back down to sergeant. Um, and President Bush landed on the aircraft carrier, and I'm like, well, the war's over. I mean, little did I know, right? Like
right.
2003-ish, or whatever it was. Well, war's over. I'll go to AMU. Little did I know the war would keep on going. But my point of all this is, I didn't go in the military to shoot. I wanted to be military first. And the reason why I got in the Marine Corps is like, well, I waited 8 years, there hasn't been a war, so I'm going to go off and do other things. And as soon as I did that, there was a war. Um, and then by the time I got back to the active duty, I thought the war was going to be over. I don't think anybody expected it to last another, 10, 15 years. Um, it always bothered me, though, that other people were out there doing what I, took an oath to do, and I was just not that just shooting was very hard. I used to say, jokingly, if you want my job, it's easy. Just beat me, and you can have it. And we can trade. We could trade places. Um, but I was addicted to it. I was addicted to the shooting, and so I went from national level to I started getting into the international stuff. Um, and then the international stuff was very, very hard because the international shooters they're state sponsored, so they're taxpayer supported. They're very, very, very good, and that was addicting. And so I kept on doing that. Then I ended up in the Army's World Class Athlete Program, where I retired from, and then I did some stints where I went on and off active duty. And when I was off active duty, I was the chief marksmanship instructor for Marine Corps base in Hawaii, which was fun because I was a civilian, but I got to be around Marines, all the time, which where my heart was. um, and that was also kind of cool because being a civilian as a GS employee, I could be on a first name basis with the chief warrant officer four and the base commander and with the lance corporal. So I was kind of in this mix of all worlds, which was kind of fun. And it was all marksmanship stuff, so I liked that too. But I always wanted to go and fight, and I was never going to do that in the U.S. military. I mean, I could have gone to selection and gone the SF route. There was a lot of opportunities I had, not a lot, but I had opportunities where I was pursuing that, where I was getting in shape, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do this when I would go to spring selection or fall selection or something like that, or try to. And then there was always like, oh, the World Championships is coming up, so well, I'll do it after this Olympics, right? Um, so I don't want to make excuses. There was chances I could have done something real, and I just chose shooting. But when I was given the opportunity to do both, like, well, you can go to a fight, and you don't have to take off of shooting for 4 years. You can do this, and you can do that. And I jumped on it. So the first time it was just instruction. The second time, I got to go play sniper for a little bit, and got to actually shoot people. So that was kind of, I don't want to say fun because it sounds like masochistic or something, but it was. I'm a big believer in the scientific method, and I like you have a theory, and then you have to test it. So I have taught a lot of snipers, and I have taught well over 100,000 servicemen, different things to shoot, either one layer or either um, directly, or having the coaches and CMTs, who I taught, who coached people, but I hadn't done it, so it was important to me personally not to be a hypocrite. I wanted to see if if the theories I had would hold up to
Play
that
out.
crucible. Yeah,
Right.
and this is going to offend a lot of people, but what I found was, which was a little, I thought it'd be close to the same. I didn't think that one would be a lot more than the other one, but the pressure I felt, the scaredness, or the terror, or whatever you want to call it, of being having the bad guy, Russia in this case, having air superiority, which was pretty cool because no America has always had air superiority since we invented the airplane. But having the bad guys have air superiority, have it where you can't key a radio mic or you're calling for fire on yourself. You can't hit a laser because they have detection equipment. They can detect laser lights different than normal light. Both the U.S. and any near peer has the ability to detect lasers on the battlefield and potentially call for fire on you. Having a bunch of Terminator drones around, and having artillery shells land like 25, 50 meters um, next to me, um, that was less pressure than shooting in the Olympics. I
Wow.
thought, yeah, I thought like the Olympics are going to prepare me a little bit. No, it was a lot worse. The Olympics was a lot more pressure. I remember we had this one Ukrainian SF guy that was there, really cool dude. I won't say his name. I don't want him to get. I hope he's still doing well. He was a really awesome guy. Um, so we're like in this hole, we're getting shelled, and he's like, "Man, you're really calm. How many times have you done this before?" And I was like, "Actually, this is my first time in actual combat." But and then I said what I thought was the funniest thing in the world, and he just like that. And I said, "Well, but I have shot against Russians a whole bunch." And I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And he didn't even laugh. So I'm not very good as a comedian, but and I'm friends with Russians. I have a lot, I have several shooter friends. I mean, not like I keep in touch with them or anything, but we're very friendly. People who I admire and respect a lot from Russia. So I have no ill will or anything like that. Um, yeah, but that was it was good. We Most of the shots were at 1,420 meters, um, which sounds like it's a far away, and it is, but you're prone with a bipod inside of a hide with some overhead cover and stuff, so it's not really that big of a deal. As long as you know your ballistics, you have to understand how rifles perform. You have to understand things like density, altitude. Wind at that
Yeah.
distance is always going to be kind of a guessing game. So you just guess it because it was from like one finger to the next finger with this hollow in between. So wind is always going to be a little bit weird. You do have the advantage of drone, arty, and mortar strikes on your objective. That gives you a little bit of wind or whatever indicators. But as any rifle shooter knows, the wind at the target is almost useless. It's wind where you're at is has a much bigger impact on the round than the wind downrange. Um, so wind is
Yes.
difficult, but it's always a guessing game. There was a couple times where there was enough going on where I felt safe to take a shot that it wasn't at somebody. For wind. Ukraine's really funny. There's like those water bottles everywhere. Like I used to joke about, you can make a gila suit by putting a bunch of water bottles, a bunch of empty water bottles on your back. You'd have a good gila suit because they're just everywhere, right? So there's this water bottle on this. It used to be a wooded area, but now it's just like twigs, right? It's just dirt.
Mm,
So
right.
that's good because now I can see a 300 grain burger, at that distance, still going 1,200 feet per second, right? I can see that impact, so I can aim at a water bottle during the right moments where I don't give away myself, and I can see what the wind's doing. So I'll shoot a shot and see how far left or right I am. And so I did that a couple times just to and, whenever I had the opportunity, just to see, okay, this is what the wind's doing down there for this condition. This is what it's a mill left or something like that, right? So I was able to do that, and I was constantly going through and checking what the density altitude was and making zero changes because at that distance, density altitude plays a really really big role, which is just what the air pressure is and the temperature, right? The combination of those two is
Correct.
called density altitude. Um, so that's really important because I think I ended up coming down like half a mil or something over the course of 12 hours. Uh, it was a lot, yeah, as it got
Now,
warmer out.
you said, so when you said 400, 1,440, I'm like, okay, we're talking
20,
almost six or 1,420. I'm like, we're
yeah,
almost 1,600 yards. So that's not a 308. You said a 300 burger. So what were you shooting?
338 Lapua Magnum with a suppressor on it.
Okay.
And I carried a lot of water bottles out there with me that with the night before, and I spent a lot of them just spraying down the can, not just to reduce mirage, right? But I also because there's a lot of drones everywhere. I didn't want to get a big thermal signature of a really hot can, right? So I sprayed down that a lot, and I sprayed on my back a little bit. I don't know if that helped or not, but I do it on my back a little bit just to try to keep me a little bit. I was undercover, but still. Ukraine at that time was a lot. I don't know how much worse it is now, but it was very much like you look at any of the World War One movies of trench warfare and
Mm-hmm.
combine that with Terminator. There's Terminator
Wow.
drones everywhere. It's like World War One with Terminator drones. And Yeah, that was it was eye opening. Yeah, it was a good experience.
So were the drones then your biggest threat actually?
I didn't have any FPVs that I'm aware of target me directly, and that would be a first-person drone, right? So that's the drones that you have to pilot. I have friends that are drone pilots now over there, that will drive it in, and it's a kamikaze bomber, but it's remote control, right? And it will, with a grenade on it or some C4 or something, and it'll drive it in. In fact, all the bunkers and hides or whatever have two heavy wool uh, um, blankets that cover the doors, because that way you can't fly a drone inside a bunker and kill 30 dudes with one grenade,
Right.
because that had happened. So
Oh shit.
yeah, so the drones are a big concern, but luckily you could hear them, and I had my Peltors on and I had the volume turned up all the way. So I didn't need the Peltors, so much when we got hit with Artie. They came in handy, but when I was shooting it was a 338, so it was suppressed. It was still loud, but it was ear safe. But I had the Peltors on so I could hear the drones, right? uh and if you hear one, you can tell that the FPVs, at least then, were really high pitched, and the recon ones were a lot lower pitched and higher. You didn't always hear the recon ones because they might have been pretty high. They weren't like predators; they were just like DJI drones. I think on both sides.
Right.
Um, but if you heard a drone and then it was there and it hovered over you for a while and then it disappeared, you had about 3 or 4 minutes to get in your hole. But the response time that Russia had at that time was like 3.5, 4 minutes. And I'd heard from my Ukrainian counterparts that when the war started, it was about a 6 minute response time, and Russia had got that
Mm.
down. They had almost half that. So if you're detected, you can expect, you want to be in a deep hole. You want to be in a deep hole. Yeah, I don't like
Wow.
Artie either, but I don't like drones more. I don't like drones more than I don't like Artie. Was, you can. This The scariest thing for me was when you hear that, like in the Vietnam movies, which is all my experience before, other than being on ranges and stuff. You hear the Artie rounds, coming in and then blows up. Is the ones you hear come in and they're duds. You don't hear anything afterwards. I'm like, did I just die? Like you don't hear the explosion. Yeah, I don't know why, but those freak me out. Um,
Oh wow.
yeah, but there was a lot of duds on the Russian side. Um, yeah, there's drones all around. The thing that I think America will find out if we do get in another fight, if we ever get in a fight with the near peers, I think we've got too reliant on lasers, because half of the day
Mm.
is night, and we want to fight at night. Um, but you don't want to use lasers. I get it. Lasers are easy. It's a lot easier than using passive, trying to look through like an EOTech or something like that with night vision on. Um, but if you're using a laser inside of a house or something like that, I know a lot of our special ops guys and stuff in GWAT, most of their stuff was door kicking, and not most of it, but a lot of it was door kicking and stuff like that, and of the assaulters. But in a I'd say more of a conventional fight against the near peer, you don't want to have lasers, or you don't want to use them. I had laser rangefinders, of course, but I was very, very cautious every time I would laze. And then after I did, I'd wait a minute or two, and then I'd go hide for a while just to make sure nobody saw it. And I was just confirming what was on my range card. So I had the old
Mm.
school Vietnam era,
Yeah.
things that we were taught back in the day. I built out range cards. I taught all the snipers there how to do range cards, old Marine Corps shit. um, Hopefully it came in handy. Um, so yeah, it was interesting.
Was there much of a counter? I'll use the term counter sniper threat from the other
No,
side.
it was so a 300 grain bullet going at 1,200 feet per second from a suppressed rifle, 1,200, or 1,420 meters away or 1,400 meters away. You can't hear or see. You just hear, what you hear is a supersonic projectile that's pretty big, that's coming in about as fast as, like, a little bit faster than like an M9, right? Than a 9 millimeter. And you hear it hit the dirt next to you. So it sounds like the shot came from right there. So that was comically, I was watching guys like come out with AK-74s in front of the bunker because they thought I was right there, right? Um, and then later on, progressing a couple hours, I saw guys doing that little helmet trick where they stick their helmet up on a stick. That was,
World
which
War One
it's
again. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was funny, and there was a couple times I tried to shoot the helmet. There was a couple helmets that I was able to hit. probably 1 in 5 because it is far away, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I did hit this one guy. It's also with a 338 with a kind of a weird position because the angle, where I had to lay in to be covered or whatever was a little bit off. So I didn't have the best recoil control, so I couldn't spot my even though it was 2.1 seconds of flight time.
Hmm.
I couldn't always follow up and see where I hit. Maybe like 1 out of 4 times I could see the effects on target.
There you go.
Um,
One of the four fundamentals.
Well, yeah. Again, in with sniping, it becomes, or long distance rifle shooting, it becomes really important because you want to know
Yeah.
like what the wind's doing. If there could be a warm pocket of air or something, and all of a sudden all your rounds are hitting high or whatever. So you want to be able to see like where it hit. It's not like a morbid thing like you want to see like that you hit a guy. Although
Right.
that did happen. Not you didn't see it all the time, but you would see that, but it's so far away. It's not like you see blood spurting out or anything. You just see
Somebody
whatever.
fall or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, or like hunch over with their hold their belly or
Right.
whatever, and feel bad for them. Which I did feel bad for them. I have no fight against those guys. Um, but anyway, yeah. So that was it was important for me personally because I hate one of the things I hate most is hypocrites, and I've always felt like I was a little bit of a hypocrite because I teach all these guys and I never actually did it. So I wanted to actually do it just to so I wouldn't be a, hypocrite. And I hate the idea of somebody saying, "Oh, you can be a good coach without being a good shooter." And I mean, you could be a good basketball coach without being a good basketball player because you're 4'2", right? You're just not going to be you're just not going to compete against Shaquille O'Neal if you're 4'2". It doesn't matter how good you are, right? Shooting's not like that. Shooting, everyone's basically the same. We're all equal. We all have the same potential, right? So if I'm telling you how to shoot better and I was never better, like, well, wait a minute. Why didn't why didn't you just do what you said to be better? Either you're a hypocrite, and you're just lying to me or telling me stuff that doesn't work, which happens a lot, which it happened to me, um, or you're lazy and didn't want to put in the effort to train. Either way, I don't want to listen to you. So, I've often maintained that you can coach to one level higher than what you've achieved. In other words, if you were like, an Olympic finalist, you can probably coach someone to Olympic medal potential, or Olympian at least to Olympic medal, potential. If you were, if you were came in like top 5 at nationals, you can probably coach someone to be the national champion. Because like I've told people, like I told John Shu, who's a guy that I tried to help out a long time. Who's won Camp Perry several times now, who's the best bullseye shooter in America right now, I think, objectively speaking. Um, I said, if you do everything I tell you to do, you'll beat me. Because even I don't do everything I tell me to do. I get lazy. I make mistakes. I don't, if you do, and sure as shit, John Shu beat me because he did what I told him to do. Um, so that's why it was important for me to go and do stuff to show the relevance of bullseye pistol shooting, of service rifle shooting, of the types of Olympic style shooting. There is a relevance to be gleaned from that helps out our warfighters. It's not always apparent, like it's not obvious that shooting one-handed bullseye has any relationship at all to combat pistol marksmanship. And I'm not going to talk about like CQB as a strategy thing because I have no business talking about that. Um, I'll talk more about sniping because now I have a little microscopic amount of experience, not very much. Um, but I won't talk about CQB and things like that. But I will talk about like that skill set of using a pistol or using a submachine gun or something for CQB. I can talk about that. Like
Right.
I'm not going to tell you how to
The
go through an
isolated
obstacle course,
skill.
but I can tell you how to run or whatever, right? So I'm focused on the marksmanship side of it. Um, so that's why I just wanted to test that. Um, and again, Bullseye does have it sets the pace for combat pistol marksmanship. It doesn't mean if you're a Bullseye national champion, you're going to roll over in a USPSA match and dominate everybody. It doesn't because you have to respect that style of shooting too. You have to train for it. It's like I said before with you, like, well, did you ever train to get better at your hold? And you didn't. You didn't train. So okay, well, you shouldn't expect to get better. If I was to jump in your body, if we do a brain transplant, right? Like we were in Star Trek or something, and knowing everything I know now about pistol shooting, yeah, I wouldn't be able to pick up a pistol in your body and shoot as good as I do. Not because you don't have the same genetic potential as I do, but you don't have the calluses built up. You haven't trained your muscles yet. Now, it wouldn't take me very long to get to my level. Within 2 weeks, I'm going to be 80% of where I'm at now. Within 6 months, I'll be 90%. Within 2 years, I'll be 99% of where I'm at now. Maybe exceeding where I'm at now, depending as I've had injuries throughout the years that you might not have. So I might have
Right.
some physical advantages by jumping in your body. Um, but bullseye is it appears to be unique in that you can take lessons learned from that discipline and jump over the other disciplines, and it's a shortcut. You can, like, if you're a good bullseye shooter, there are some stages in an IPSC match that you're like a cheat card. Like, I've shot matches like, oh, you have to shoot this match one-handed, and I'm like, I gotta shoot it one-handed. Oh no, that's so much easier. And I've shot
Thank you
some
for
matches.
handicapping the rest of the field.
Right, right. And I've shot some matches. They were, like, outlaw two-gun matches. And I was like, hey, can I shoot this stage one-handed? And they're like, well, it's your score. I'm like, okay. It'd be easier. It's actually easier for me to shoot one-handed in some situations, right? Um, but if you have like the basis, that's why you can see like in bullseye shooters can transition over and shoot service rifle, and they get up to the top. That may not be the absolute best if they don't invest the time and the energy. It takes years, to invest to be at the top, but they can get really close really quick because they had that shortcut of those years dedicated to bullseye shooters. Or to bullseye shooting. You have a service rifle shooter who spent, really top of the line, service rifle shooter. They come over, they don't have like a big advantage when they start over but they have a little bit of an advantage because they're a shooter, but they got to almost start over. If you have a USPSA shooter who's, a grandmaster or whatever, they come over to bullseye, they almost have to start over. But a bullseye shooter, for some reason, they have a giant advantage. They have a shortcut when they go to almost any other discipline. Um, I don't know, like if you have an air pistol shooter in the Olympics, um, they have an advantage. They start over. They'll start out with a shortcut in bullseye shooting, but they have a long way to go to get good shooting with a 45. Um, so if you start
Well,
out shooting with a 45 and a 22 like they do in bullseye, if you can shoot one-handed, then you can shoot two-handed. If you train, just because you can shoot one-handed good, it doesn't mean you can add a hand and it's gonna make everything better. And oftentimes it makes it worse at first, right? Because you take away half your problems when you take away this other hand. But if you put forth the effort, and like the Marine Corps team in 2000 at AFSAM showcased that. We trained for 2 weeks shooting combat pistol two-handed with M9s, where we had like the National Guard team and the other teams trained year round. The National Guard as a combat shooting team. That was their job, full-time job, shoot combat pistol, right? We trained for 2 weeks, destroyed them. Why? Because we were bullseye shooters. We were bullseye shooters who invested the time and energy to train and respect that style of shooting enough to get good at it. So we had this big advantage. So there were some stages of fire that they didn't know how to shoot. Like, if you had to be accurate, you had to be one-handed or
mm,
something. Where we had this massive advantage, um, and the level of pressure that we were able to deal with. And if you're shooting representing the Marine Corps at the national championships on Team Scarlet for the service, that's a lot of pressure. And so there's a natural crucible that the elite level bullseye shooters, whether it's in the AMU or the Marine Corps team or the Guard team, but any of the teams or my team, Team Zero, my civilian team I'm on now, who's won a bunch, over the past couple of years. We've won a lot more than the AMU has. Um, just want to throw that out there. But we have dealing with that kind of pressure at that high level. When you get to lower level stuff, it's a lot easier. And likewise, going in from the Olympics to bullseye shooting, has given me an advantage. So, like, I remember the first time that I won at Camp Perry. It was the last time that Zins had shot Camp Perry, and bless his heart, I jokingly say that I'm the reason why he gave up. uh, but I do have enormous respect for Brian, but I did beat him by like 15 points. And it was because, I was up there like, okay, I don't, not that I don't care. This used to be my everything, right? I still wanted to do well, but I had learned all these tools of how to deal with pressure and how to use it to your advantage from higher levels of competition. That translates down, right? And again, and that translates into combat. If you use it well, like you could be, getting shot at and stuff like that, it can translate. Well, I feel this pressure. I don't have control over this. I don't have control over if a 155 round lands on my ass, but I do have control over this. So you focus on things you have control over, and that takes practice. And you can practice that in the structured environment, the safe environment of competition shooting, and that prepares you for, or it can help prepare you for combat shooting, because those skills you learn how to deal with pressure, um, get refined, in a very positive way. Or they don't always. There's a lot of people out there. I've seen national champions that pressured out and crumbled. I've pressured out before, not as much anymore now, and I don't perform well. It's because I suck. It's not it's not because I pressured out. um, but I've felt pressure before. I know what it feels. I know what it feels like, and um, I think I know mostly how to deal with it. Mostly
If you had to give somebody one piece of advice on dealing with pressure in competition, what would it be?
embrace it. Don't run from
Oh,
it. Don't build a bubble. Build a fighting position, right? Like, don't, that fight or flight response, that chemical cocktail that your body's shooting into you to get ready for this fight. Either like, I'm going to run away from a saber-toothed tiger, or I'm going to try to fight him, right? That is there to help you, right? Now,
yes.
as it turns out, it's a lot like if your watch is a little bit off and you spin the dial. Well, the odds are it's not going to be more accurate after you spun the dial, right? That's just entropy. It's more likely to be off. That pressure is more likely to screw you up unless you try to engineer it and like shape it into doing what you want to do. But that takes practice. So you put yourself in these situations that are high pressure and you practice using it to your advantage. Don't run for it. Don't, you can't hide from it. Like, especially like in the Olympics, dude, your scores are up on the monitor right in front of you, along with everyone else's, right? Like, what the spread is. They make sure that you know exactly what's going on in ICF competitions in a final. They know what your ranking is, what your placing is for every string of shots, or every shot. You can't run from it. People who try to run from it fail. Um, the people who deal with it are the ones who perform the best. So it's learning how to deal with that pressure. It's hard to do, and in the beginning, it's like shooting a lot of matches. And this is what I tell people, because it's counterintuitive. But then it comes to a certain point where it switches and you have to shoot very few matches, like just a couple a year. 'Cause if you have a match every weekend, it doesn't take you very long, maybe a couple of years of that. And like, well, if I do bad this match, I have a match next weekend where I can make up for it. Well, then it's less pressure because you have another match next weekend, right? Um, if you have only like 2 or 3 matches a year, well, now I got to wait 6 months, So now this match has a lot more pressure in it. Now it's more focused. So I think it's good in, over a decades long training, cycle. You go through periods where you shoot lots of matches, and you go through periods where you shoot very, very few matches that are, but are high, really high, importance for you, to have that kind of mix. Because like at the Olympics, at least it's once every 4 years. You can't say, "Well, I'll be better at the next Olympics." What's 4 years away? You don't know what's
Right.
going to
You may
happen.
not be back. Yeah.
Yeah, there might not be shooting in the next Olympics, right? There might not be in the next Olympics. You might, have, your back might be all screwed up. You might be got hit by a car, or something. So, um, whereas something like Camp Perry, like, well, it's a year, which I remember that used to think that was forever. And now like a year away. I'm older now, like, so, it's only a year. But when it's every single weekend, you just got to be cautious that it doesn't get routine. You want to try to keep it mixed up. And
Mm.
speaking of to mixing things up, I think it's good to cross train and shoot other disciplines. I think it's good to shoot other disciplines. So we, as a shooting family, the that population of Americans who shoot, we should have respect for what other ones shoot. And the only way to gain respect is to play their game a little bit. Um, that, and I think it helps you, because if you do something that works for what you do, but it doesn't work in some other thing, it's probably not right. It's my theory, at least. I could be wrong, but again, I subscribe to that theory, of the general theory of pistol shooting, that you do this and it works for everything, and if it doesn't, then you adjust it, to make it work for everything. and shooting a bunch of different disciplines. I mean, I wish I could shoot more USPSA matches. Um, I just don't have time, you know.
Well, well, that brings the question. I mean, you said you're almost 50. You're going to be 51 at your next birthday. How much longer do you plan on doing this?
Well, the oldest Olympic champion happened to be a pistol shooter. He was 74. So I
You
think
going
I
to
have a
break
couple of
that?
years left. I hope not. I mean, I had hoped to retire years ago. Um, like I said, it is addictive. I've seen, I've had really good friends of mine, the ones that got multiple Olympic medals in shooting, and like you never know when it's like being in. I go to Vegas every year for a shot show, but I don't gamble. But I imagine it's like gambling. Like, when do you quit? Well, I'm $10,000 up. Well, if you quit now, you'll never make 11,000, right? I used to joke about, like, I played one game of blackjack in Vegas and I won $20. I'm like, oh, I'm quitting. I'm going to quit while ahead. I'm going to break Vegas, right? So it depends on when you quit, right? So she had 3 Olympic medals, and she wanted. It's addictive. You want another one, right? So you go back, and then she didn't medal, didn't do very good. She's like, well, I can't leave like this. And
Oh
then you get to
no.
this really hard, yeah. And then you get to this really hard spot, right? Where and I've known good shooters who came back from something like that. Du Lee from China, incredible rifle shooter. She's come back after I forget how many years off that she had taken. But I've seen that happen before. It's really hard. One of the hardest things I found taking a big long, I mean, a multi-year break and coming back is it's easy to, well, maybe it's not easy to forget because we all remember, but it's easy to take for granted how hard it is to be really good, how much training it is. And it takes a lot of work. And just like working out with like with weights or whatever, if you can work out and you want to stress the muscles, and they'll react to that stress by growing bigger and stronger, right? If you overwork them, then you'll get injured. Same as shooting. If you overtrain, your performance will go down. um, but if you get to a certain point where, say, you can, bench press or curl so much weight, if you just want to maintain that, it is a lot less volume to maintain. You just have to go, not really just go through the motions, but you don't have to work out at anywhere near the levels you had to get bigger just to maintain. Right? There is a big difference between maintenance weightlifting and trying to build.
And gains. Yeah.
Right. And shooting is the same way. You can get to a point where you can maintain, and you can maintain that for, not forever, but you can maintain that for a long period of time without a whole lot of shooting. But to build, in the beginning, it's easy to build. But when you get really close to the top, it gets hard to build. Adding on those couple points towards the end gets really difficult. And that takes a lot of work. And so if you take a couple years off at that point without the maintenance and stuff, and you've dropped down, even if you just drop down, like say your average drop down 10 points or something, you'll gain back 5 of those points pretty quick. But those last 5 points, it takes years. It can get really hard. And I found that out the hard way. And I think I knew it intellectually before then. Um, but it's different when you experience it. I found, I think you can take a year. I've taken a year off before, or almost like 6 months or something, and it was a positive thing. Like on the Marine Corps team, we would shoot a summer and then you go back to the fleet for like 6, 7 months and then come back. That, I think, was a positive thing. Oftentimes I'd come back in massive gains. Um, not immediately, like, but really quickly, I would catch back up. Um, it's just when you take 2, 3, 4 years off that it gets really hard. So I've known shooters that were good that tried to come back after a decade or so, or longer, and they get pretty good pretty quick, and that's fun because you're improving. Then you hit that plateau, and it's hard, and then you remember how much effort it was the first time. And I think not a lot of people keep on after that. They might keep on recreationally, but it's hard for them to want to push through that plateau and to try to get to the real high levels.
Well, you kind of touched on that earlier when you said if you were to take your head and put it on my body, in 2 weeks you'd be at 80%. In 6 months you'd be at 90%. In 2 years you'd be at 99. So
Yeah.
the smaller
That's just the
increment of
physical side, right? There's also a mental
yeah.
component too. So, not that I know how to shoot, right? Like I understand what the fundamentals are and things like that, but but your capacity to mentally focus and discipline your mind to spotlight that focus on these areas for a period of time and lengthening that period of time, that is like a muscle that you have to develop. And if you don't work on it, it'll atrophy. You'll get not mentally weak as in you're dumber necessarily, but your ability to focus hard and intensely will diminish without practice. Without and they say perfect practice makes perfect, but it's not just practice. It's like you got to the really high levels. You got to be pushing it all the time. So it's not like, well, I dry fired for an hour today. Okay, you dry fired for an hour today, but were you 100%? Was it? Oh, let's say you never really 100%. If you were like 95% intense for that whole hour, or you're 95% intense for 10 minutes of that hour, because it's that 95% intensity is where you get gains from. And then if you kept on training
Right.
after that, where you're at 80% or 70%, well, now you're training intensity at a lower level. So you're damaging yourself. You're not helping yourself.
Correct.
So
So
it's being able to push the limit and to where it's the stress is what causes you to build.
you mentioned earlier, you said everybody has the same potential in the beginning. Do you think it seems to me like where the potential is different is for people being able to focus on tasks, where some people are more able to focus at that 95%, whereas someone else may only be able to focus at 85 or 90.
Yeah, we actually it's funny in bullseye shooting. Some people, this isn't politically correct, but some people call that retard strength, right? So because they
Okay.
someone's not very smart, they aren't distracted by a bunch of crazy stuff. Like, dude, just align the sights, right? So that's what we call retard strength. But I think it's more than that. So in the context of pistol shooting, um, there are some people like Jim Henderson, who's one of the best service pistol shooters in America, or used to be, when he was shooting. Great guy, um, really really good shooter, and he was a lineman for a long time. So he was climbing up ladders and stuff like that, and so he had really good grip strength from that. Steve Ryder, multi-time national champion, 80 Olympian. He was a plumber. It's like, so his forearms were massive. So both of those two guys, just as examples, they had like this head start of physicality in particular areas that were useful in pistol shooting. Where if you started out without that, you have to build that to catch up, right? So they had a certain amount of, and it wasn't luck or whatever, but they had a certain head start in physicality. Marines over the Army, I'd like to think that they have a certain physicality head start, but now I know enough Army Rangers and stuff like that where I know that that's not necessarily the case. Um, but if you're a young service member, and you work out and you're in shape, then you have that physicality advantage, right? That gives you that head start. There are some people, I think, that in the beginning they just happen to think about trigger control the right way. Like they just did it out of all the different ways you could do it. You spin the dial on your watch and it's between 1 and 12 o'clock. They just happen to start out at 12 o'clock, right? Like they pulled the trigger close to the right, not perfect, but they just happen to do it the right way. So those all give impressions of a natural shooter. I don't think they are. I think they're just a head start, and in some cases it can hurt them, because I often say that the first big plateau a shooter hits is the hardest one to break through, and the higher that plateau is, the harder it is to break through it. So if you start out where you're really really good, and then you don't plateau until you're like at a national champion level, it's really hard to get past that. It's really hard to break past that and get to the next higher level. I think Zins was like that. I don't know, because he started before I did. I only saw him when he was becoming the first national champion. Um, but from what I understand, he was a really good. He started out really good. He was, he was always a really good shooter. Um, and he plateaued right at the national champion level, which is a great place to plateau, right? I know someone
Right.
else who, plateaued at Olympic champion. It's all downhill from there, and then they couldn't get any better. Not, I mean, because you can't get any better than Olympic champion. What happened was the
Right.
scores in the rest of the world got better, and that person's scores
Oh.
stayed exactly the same.
Hmm.
And it. Whereas with me, I feel like I'm kind of lucky that I started out where I sucked. So I had to get better. All those little baby steps right for the very beginning. I'm used to sucking. That's no big deal. I know what it takes to to have to work to get better. But yeah, a plateau can be hard to work through because you have this natural inclination people have. This is what it took me to get here, so I need to focus on this to get better. And the reality is, what it takes you to get to a certain level is at a certain point is almost certainly not what it takes you to get better. And oftentimes, what it took you to get to a certain level, if you just keep on doing that, you'll get worse. So you have to change. And when you get into things that training techniques that did not work when you were at one level, all of a sudden those are the ones that work when you get to a higher level. And those ones after a while might stop working, and you got to switch, and you got to find something else that's going to get you to that next higher level. As far as like a training plan or patterns or ways to think about things, um, in the short term, what you can think about is if you have a training plan, you do it. It's just like working out with weights. If a good rule of thumb is, let's say if you're doing curls or something, well, you have a workout plan. I'm going to do like 10 hammer curls or whatever, and whatever 3 sets of whatever your training plan is for curls, and you're going to do them and for a couple weeks, and after a couple weeks you'll get to a point where you plateau, and you have two options: take a whole week or two off, and shooting is exactly the same thing, or change your or take a week off or a couple of days off and change your exercises, like do different exercises. Instead of doing hammer curls, do like flat bench, whatever curls, or preacher curls or something, right? So the same thing that works for working out works out with shooting. When you're training, when you hit a steady state plateau and you're there enough where it's long enough where you realize that this is in fact a plateau, which takes some experience to like recognize when it's a plateau, especially in the beginning because you're up and down so much, it's hard to recognize that. I'm talking about when you get to some level of competency. Then you have two choices: take 2 or 3 weeks off, or, which is hard to do, or change your training plan. So that's what I like about rapid fire pistol, which is what I shoot mostly now, is because this is so many different ways that you could train that are constructive. You can focus on 8 seconds, you can focus on 6 seconds, on 4 seconds, you can focus on your lift, you can focus on dry fire, which you should always be doing anyway. And just like in weightlifting, there are certain like movements in weightlifting you're always going to do, like the Arnold Schwarzeneggers and the Dorian Yates and all those big guys. There are certain things they always did, right? And then they do other exercises too. So there's certain things in shooting you're always going to dry fire. You should always have good follow through. So there are those things. And in rapid fire, it's like shooting a half course. You're going to do that a lot. But there might be other things where you're focusing on force, like you're just doing this drill over and over again. Um, and that might give you some improvement in that, and then when you hit a plateau, you switch up your training plan, like usually, uh, dramatically. And that could be volumes, like you change, like you go from a high volume to like low volume or something like that, or change, how many days off you have. I think that the days off are probably more important than the days on once you get to be really good. Because once you're really good, you know how to train. And it's not like, well, you need to go train more. Well, dude, you're like one of the top 10 in the world. This guy knows how to train. Like at that point, they need to know when not to train. And that's the thing that takes discipline. It's not, once you're good, it's discipline's not training more, it's training less. So
So
that's a
what?
hard thing for people to figure
So
out
training
sometimes.
smarter, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to train smarter, right? But it's
Yeah,
not
but I
always good
mean,
to train more. There are
right.
times
But
where
that's
you
what I
do
mean.
you do
Like,
need breaks.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and
like
then you can
the old
organize your
saying.
breaks and plan them and stuff.
Like you probably know the saying because it was rampant in the Marine Corps. It's easy to be hard, but it's hard to be smart.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is very true. Like one of the like a hip pocket plan that I will fall back on is if I have a high volume day of training, it's going to be followed by at least one day off. If I have then I can have two mid volume days in a row before it requires a day off, and then like three lower volume days before it requires a
Mm.
day off. That's my rule of thumb. Um, and a high volume day for me changes wildly. Like so my capacity physically to train high volume is not what it was when I was younger. High volume day for me used to be 14 hours and 1,000 rounds of live rounds and 2 3,000 rounds of dry fire. That was a high 14 15 hours solid. That was a high volume day for me. um That
Wow,
was too
that's a
much though.
lot.
I didn't have anybody there to tell me like, don't, you need this, you're past the point of diminishing returns. And I was just like, if you're overtraining, like, doing curls, if you do too many of them, you're not going to get any gains. Right.
Right. Yeah,
I
you're
heard someone
overworking them.
use an analogy. It's like if you scratch yourself with sandpaper or whatever, scratch a little bit where it gets a little red, and you take a break and come back and do it again. You'll build a callus. If you scratch too much, you'll start bleeding. You don't build a callus. You just injure yourself, right?
Right. You get a
You know,
scab.
yeah, exactly. Working out is exactly like that. Or, most people don't get to that point because they don't train enough. And shooting is exactly like that. And most people don't get to that point because they don't train enough. Now a high volume day for me is probably closer to only like 500 rounds and another like maybe 2, 3 hours of dry fire. And I don't do those very often because my elbow hurts. So, or not my elbow, but like my forearm or whatever.
Forearm.
So I think
Yeah.
if I could jump in your body, I think I could do better. Because
Yeah. My
I'd
arms are
have a
my
fresh
least
arm.
injured.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'd have a fresh arm to work with, which would be great.
Bring your
Um,
knees though.
you don't need knees if you're shooting pistol. Like I'm not like running around.
Well,
I'm in one spot.
static. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in one spot. So
That's
that's
the
another
one
thing in
place.
ISSF. They check you for like taping. So after you get random checks and before a final where they make you drop your trousers, pull your shirt up, make sure you don't have any tape around you or any like wraps or anything around your knees or ankles or anything like that. So they check for that. There's
Really?
doping control. Yeah, I am. USADA, the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, can come knock at my door at 6 a.m. any random morning and ask for a sample and ask for a urine sample to make sure I'm not doping. And doping, they
Right.
did a test a couple of years ago against it was in the Colorado Springs GNC, and there's something like 75% of the stuff in there would make you pop hot on an Olympic doping test.
That's
So it's not just
crazy.
over the counter stuff. It's
Right.
and in all fairness, there's you can get therapeutic use exemptions, but then you have stuff like, why is it that every runner in Oregon, every Olympic runner in Oregon has asthma and has the therapeutic use exemption for an inhaler? Seems kind of funny that they're Olympic runners and they all have asthma. They all have the same doctor.
Right.
Yeah, they all have the same doctor. So the U.S. isn't beyond reproach on some of these doping scandal things. Russia's really bad.
Mm,
Russia was really, really bad. The Sochi Olympics was like a Tom Clancy novel. It was bad. It was cool, but
yeah.
it was bad. Yeah, doping is a big deal. So if you're a
I,
shooter, none of this stuff really helps you except for beta blockers, right? So, but you can still pop hot on all the other stuff. So you got to be careful. Everything everything that goes in you has to be accounted for. So you don't take multivitamins, or you're very very careful about the ones you take. Um, and you definitely don't take beta blockers because that's like the one drug that does help you out in shooting. Um, so you don't take those, which is a prescription medication for like a heart medication or something.
right.
Um,
Yeah. It basically, it doesn't necessarily, it can slow your heart, but it's used primarily to prevent your heart from speeding up.
right. But I know lawyers who took beta blockers before they took the bar because they got pressured out in the bar. So they took beta blockers, and it reduces your sense of subjective pressure.
Yes. Yes.
I know surgeons that would take them before long surgeries, a heart surgery, because it helps
I'd be
steady
drinking caffeine. Stay awake.
right. Yeah, I would too.
It might be a little jittery, but it's
Which is something you can
you'll be
test
fine.
because caffeine doesn't increase fine motor control like at a clinical level, but it does do it reduces fine sensitivity or something like that. But anyway, it's one of those things I've heard that before. You've heard that before, that caffeine messes you up for shooting. Test it.
Yeah.
Because every time I'm at Camp Perry, I have a big white monster on and I finish before slow fire is over. And I start it before slow fire starts, and I finish it before slow fire is over. And I started out doing, now I do it like a, because it's a tradition. But I started out doing it just to screw with people. So everyone's like, "Oh my God, you can't have caffeine." I'm like, "Well, yeah, you can. It's just now I wouldn't have 10 monsters or 10 cups of coffee before I shot because
Right.
you run the experiment, do the test, and you see what the outcome is. Um, so there's all you would alcohol you can't do domestically, but internationally, the ISSF alcohol is not a banned substance in shooting. Um, Now, when I was on the Marine Corps team, I've set a couple of national records where I was still pretty drunk from the night before, if I'm being honest.
Not
However,
surprised.
now shooting rapid fire, I can't do that because I want the reaction time. I don't want to be hungover or drunk. Now,
Right.
2 weeks before a major competition, I don't touch a drop of alcohol. Um, and if you think you can't go 2 weeks without drinking anything, then you probably have a problem.
You know,
Um,
right before, remember division matches, they would have distinguished shooters like give classes, like your hip pocket
yeah,
classes. And the one thing that stuck with me, so my first one was 86. Like I had not even been in the Marine Corps a year and I was at a division match. And the thing that stuck out to me was the guy said, if you do it today, do it tomorrow, do it the next day. Keep the routine the same. Meaning, if your normal routine is to have a cup of coffee in the morning, even if you're shooting that day, have a cup of coffee in the morning because it's when you change the routine that typically you're going to have a problem.
well, I think that if you have a known quantity is typically better than an unknown quantity, right?
Yeah.
I often say it's never too late to have good trigger control. So, like when in doubt, align the sights. I'll say different things like that. Like, um, so just because you jerked the trigger yesterday, that doesn't mean you should do it today, right? There are,
No, right. I'm talking
but
caffeine
again, I
use.
wouldn't, I wouldn't recommend like a series of Holden drills for the very first time the day before the match. Um, and I would, yeah, if you smoke or which you should quit anyway. If you drink coffee all the time, I had a cup of coffee this morning. Then you shouldn't stop that before a match unless you've
Right.
experimented with it before. So, like, if in the division matches, it's different because it's really a short period of time and whatever. But if you're like a professional shooter or you're doing it on your own or whatever, you have time scales that are a lot longer. So yeah, drink coffee all the time and then don't drink it for a day and see if it helps you or
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 not.
hurts you.
Right.
It might have a benefit. I don't think it will. I mean, I think you'd probably do better with coffee. I know I shoot better slow fire with caffeine than I do without caffeine typically because I'm ADD a little bit, so it helps me focus a little bit more if I have a little bit of
Yeah.
not a lot of caffeine, but a little bit of caffeine in my system. But for rapid fire, which you'd figure caffeine would help me out a lot, no benefit at all. Doesn't help me out at all.
I
Doesn't
feel
hurt
like it
me.
might actually be. Oh, it doesn't. Okay, because I
It doesn't
almost
hurt
feel
me.
like that could be counterproductive when you want to be quick, but you want to be smooth and not herky jerky, which I feel like a lot of caffeine would do to me in that situation.
Not if you
Like
train
too
well.
jittery.
Yeah, you
No,
you
no,
you,
I
you want to
agree.
train
Yeah,
well. Um, Orange juice. I don't drink orange juice before matches because that makes me feel jittery. And I don't see jittery. I just feel like
sugar.
yeah, maybe I'm a sugar
Yeah,
fiend. I'll eat a candy bar, a big whatever right before a match. It doesn't bother me. So it's something about orange juice. Um,
but it's liquid and it absorbs rapidly, so you're going to get a sugar spike. You're
yeah,
going to get a
maybe.
blood sugar spike.
Um,
I've been a
but I've
paramedic for
had big cups
25
of like the
years.
super sweet coffees that are like 7,000 calories or whatever. I've had those like while
Right.
I'm shooting. They don't bother me. So and maybe the orange juice doesn't bother me. Maybe that was just an anecdotal thing or whatever that happened a couple times. Um, but like I think it's something you can experiment with and test, and you can titrate, or in other words, take measured amounts of caffeine over certain periods of time if you want to run the test and see what effects it has or doesn't have. I've taken Benadryl before. When I didn't need it, I took like 2 or 3 Benadryls and then trained to see what happened because I've been in matches where I was like sneezing really bad, right? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to take Benadryl because it'll mess me up. And then so I took Benadryl, which makes you drowsy and everything. Didn't bother me at all in rapid fire. So now I know it's safe to
Okay.
take Benadryl, but before a match. If I feel like it's going to prevent me from sneezing or my eyes watering a little bit, I might take a Benadryl. And I've already run the experiment, so I know it's not. Now the thing about running these experiments is you run the experiment and it's valid for like a couple years, and then you got to rerun it again because your body changes, your diets change. So what worked before might not work anymore. Um, and I'm actually starting to wonder that now with me personally about caffeine. I'm wondering if caffeine is starting to have a bigger negative effect on me now than it used to not have any effect on me at all. I could have a triple espresso and wouldn't bother me at all. Um, Maybe not an Italian one, because at the Pardini truck they give you an espresso that's like a real espresso. Like that thing is because
Oh,
they're Italian, right? Those
right.
guys give you this shot that is like pure caffeine. I mean, it is. Yeah, I wouldn't want to shoot after that. 'Cause I've had
It's
that at World Cup
sabotage.
games
That's what
before.
they're doing. It's sabotage. Those sons
Well,
of
you're shooting.
bitches.
You're shooting their gun. They don't want to sabotage you, and they won't give it to you before you shoot. They'll only give it to you after you shoot. But it's like black tar. Uh, it's good if you want to run a PFT or something. But uh, but anyway, yeah, you can experiment with these things, but I think it's important to every couple of years go back and revisit these things because as your body changes, as your physiology was to change, you might, what didn't affect you before might start affecting you, and what affected you before negatively might not affect you anymore. A quick story about caffeine and Brian Zins, which he doesn't remember this, but in '96, my
Conveniently.
first summer, yeah, we were in Summersville, West Virginia. Now at Marine Corps Championships, we shot infantry trophy match, which I was a swing shooter because I could shoot accurately and fast. So I and shoot, and we were all you had to do was knock on all the targets. And I say that only because I had that in the back of my head. I'm shooting team match on the gold team, so the second four shooters in the Marine Corps, and Staff Sergeant Poe crossfires a shot on my target, and I'm like, I have earplugs in. He has earplugs in. Say, hey, do you want me to put one more on your target since it's a team match? And he's like, yeah, and he didn't hear me. So I was like, okay, I unloaded. I get an actual point of aim. I dry fired his target, load back up. I shoot an X or like it was like a 10. Then I unload, dry fire back on my target, and I finish shot. We go down, score, repair. He's like, I thought I crossfired your target. Like, yeah, you did. I put one on your target. He's like, oh no. So it was two misses that we had, right?
Oh no.
Yeah, so I didn't get to shoot any team matches after that. I was kicked off the team after that for like 2 months. So then we're in Quantico, the last Quantico match before we go to Camp Perry, and it's for service pistol. And I'm not shooting the team match because I did the crossfire thing. So Zins, so if someone offers me a Coke because you had a little cookout there going on, like, no, I don't want to have caffeine, right? Because caffeine's bad. There's caffeine in Coca-Cola. And Zins is like, come on, have it, man. It's no big deal. Like, oh, well, it's Brian Zins. I have to take it. So I drink it. And as soon as I finish that Coke, Gunny Lawless comes up to me. Hey, Sanderson, you're shooting Gold Cup as the Tyro. I'm like, what? Or the, for Gold Team. I'm like, I can't shoot. I just drank a whole Coca-Cola. And I shot a 290 hardball, which at that time was my personal best. The 290 with 230 grain ball is pretty damn good. And after that, I was on the gold team. After that, I reserved my spot from that point on gold or higher in team matches. But then I started thinking about it. Like, wait a minute! All this crap that told me about caffeine being bad, I just shot my personal best when I wasn't ready. After I had a whole Coca-Cola, like that's a lot of caffeine or
So
something.
you had
But
sugar and caffeine.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think it does. At least it used to not bother me. I think it bothers me more now. Honestly, if I'm being honest with you, I think sugar and still eat a lot. Half of my caloric intake is probably chocolate still, which is not good. I need to fix that just so I can live longer.
Slow that down.
Yeah,
Just
but
make it a dark chocolate.
oh, I love dark chocolate. Yeah. But what I need to do, but I have started running experiments where I reduce my sugar intake before shooting, and it's unfortunately I really hate to admit this. It seems to have a positive effect, which I don't want it to have. I really want to have it, eat lots of sugar and caffeine before I shoot, but I might have to. But anyway, these are these things that you have to experiment with and find out for yourself. And your body changes, so over the years you have to re-experiment.
Right. Yeah, I asked my dad was the head coach of the Marine Corps rifle team for quite a few years, and I asked him, I was like, "Why don't you guys use Gatorade?" He said, "Well, we tried it one summer, as an experiment to try, but it ended up causing people to get jitters. So they went back to their tried and trusted watermelon and grapefruit juice." And
That's weird.
people, yeah, grapefruit juice. It kept them hydrated. There was salt in it, so they didn't have any issue. And
Salt's good.
obviously, the watermelon at the end, they would put salt on. And at
So
the end of the match, they would do the watermelon with salt.
I want to clarify this for anybody who's listening or watching. I'm not a doctor. I don't intend on getting healthcare advice. Don't take healthcare advice from me. Be smart. But I've always heard, as you had, to shoot well, you have to be hydrated. You have to be hydrated. Why? People give you a lot of answers. Like, well, have you ever run the experiment of being dehydrated and shooting? Other than I have, when I was drunk, or when I was hungover the night before in the Marine Corps team, I ran that experiment a lot. I always thought like I did well despite that. So I didn't put two and two together. So I am competing in a World Cup It's World Cup USA actually, and I got food poisoning bad. Like for the day before the match, like really bad. Every 45 minutes, like clockwork, I was throwing up chem-light fluid. Like it was just bile. I didn't sleep at all.
Right.
Um, I was the most dehydrated I've ever been in my life. Um, it took me all day long to drink a little tiny bottle of water because I'd have a cap full and it felt like it just sat like right here. My esophagus was all swollen from all the vomiting I'd been doing.
Damn.
Um, I shot a 585, which is a world class score in rapid fire. Made the final. The final was until late afternoon. This is Fort Benning in the summertime, so it's like 100 degrees out. I'm ridiculously dehydrated at this point. I don't remember the final. I don't remember being there. I was that bad. I didn't shoot very good in the final. I shot really good in qualification. I did not shoot very well in the final. I even put my phone up on the firing line, evidently, which you can't do that. But like every day in training, I get up there, put my phone down, whatever. And I just went through the motions. Like whatever you do in training how you train, how you fight, or you're going to fight
Right.
what you train, basically. So that's what I trained. And as soon as I lost my conscious thought, I was just going through the motions. And but after that, I was like, wait a minute. When I was shooting qualification, I wasn't unsteady. I could see my sights, but I was super dehydrated. Like I was like not even. I was like, remember that espresso that Pardini gave me, that like thick tar. That's what my urine looked like. I was that dehydrated, right? So after that, I started running the experiment where I dehydrate myself on purpose and shoot. No detrimental effects at all. In fact, so then I ran the experiment where I was overhydrated and shot, and then I'd get jittery. And so, just if I had to guess, the reason why the Marine Corps team was jittery on Gatorade is because Gatorade was more appetizing. They drank more. They were overhydrated. By being overhydrated, or on the positive side of the hydration scale, it increased their jitteriness. Um, the idea that being dehydrated, like being anything other than clear urine on the dehydration scale, is detrimental to sports performance and your hold and all that. Okay, well, show me some evidence. Run the
Right.
test.
Right.
Don't go super dehydrated, but like maybe just like, just a little bit. Because I used to run in that problem. Like before every match, I get in this like fight mode where I eat too much. Like, it's regular. "Ah, this is gonna be the last meal I'm gonna have. I'm going into Braveheart style battle, right? I don't know when I'm gonna eat again. Like, well, you're gonna eat lunch again. What are you talking about? There's gonna be lunch after the match is over. But I'm hungry like that from this, instinctive thing and thirsty. And I'll drink a lot of water because I don't know when the next time I'm gonna get water. Um, Now I'm disciplined about how much I eat and how much I drink before I shoot, especially before I compete. I don't want to be dehydrated, but I don't want to be overly hydrated, and I don't want to eat too much. I want to be eat. I want to. I have a normal problem when I'm eating anyway. I never get full until 30 minutes after I'm stopped eating. As long as I still got food coming in my mouth, I'm still hungry. I'll still keep on eating. I'm bad. But I force myself to eat like a certain amount, and I try to give myself, that type of stuff. And I don't measure it as accurately as what I should. I should start running those experiments here in the off season. Um, Once I get to a stable, plateau level, of performance, you can start running experiments like that. But anyway,
Do you,
point is, overhydration, potentially is bad. It's worth experimenting for. Don't dehydrate yourself to the point of kidney stones and unconsciousness. Uh, but overhydration for just precision marksmanship is probably not the best thing.
well, at the age of 30, once you pass the age of 30, you start losing 1% of kidney function a year. So I almost feel like when you're in your 20s and maybe even your 30s, your body's much more able to deal with those situations than they are now in your 50s. You know what I mean?
Well, I certainly used to not I used to not get hangovers as much back then. Uh, so my liver was a lot stronger for sure. Um,
It was
yeah, I mean,
fresher.
there are, after a certain age, you start losing muscle mass every year. Um,
Yeah.
but that's on average of scales. There are things you can do that you have agency over to prevent that. So as you get older, like I work out now, I run now, not because I want to run, because I want my knees to work 20 years from now. And if you don't use it, you lose it. And I got bad knees. I had bad knees in the Marine Corps. I almost needed knee surgery once after a toe hump, where I popped a ligament, not all the way, but it was bad. Um, but now I run, enough where my knees are strong. Where you need the impact your bones and your cartilage and stuff like that. To to not, I try not to go so far that I hurt myself, but I try to run long enough and regularly enough where I still have that tool in my tool bag. I work out now because there'll be a certain point, hopefully many decades, from now, where I will just naturally lose muscle faster than what I can build it. And right now, I'm not at that stage. So you want to go into older age, with as much muscle mass as you, not like, super bodybuilder, but with muscle mass, with the expectation that you'll start losing it. Um,
Right.
and as far as liver function and kidney function and stuff like that, those are on averages. And for the individual, I don't know, like, you take this multivitamin or vitamin D or this or that, but I'm sure there's probably things in your diet you can do to help increase the longevity of that. Um, like blood sugar, and people who have, what little I know about this, but for type whatever diabetes, you can solve that pretty easy just by fasting. You just eat less, and all of a sudden your diabetes is solved. Like, it's
Type 2.
fixed.
Yeah.
Is it type 2? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not diet.
It's type
For
2.
all my efforts in life, I'm not diabetic. And I've tried really hard. Like, as far as eating candy and chocolate and stuff, I've tried really hard.
Oh,
I was
that's
at the World
funny.
Championships once, and we had a dietitian there. And she pricked my finger on my left hand, and took blood sugar, samples when I got to the range, before I started warming up, after I started warming up, right before I shot, right as soon as I was done shooting, right before the final, and right after the final. And along the way, I had a lunch. I had a fully leaded Coca-Cola with caffeine and sugar in it. My blood sugar didn't vary a point the entire day.
Wow.
and and which was really surprising to me, because I always thought there was a correlation between steadiness of hold and blood sugar levels, because I know if I'm shooting slow fire, I need to eat as I'm shooting. It's like, well, that's because I need to maintain my blood sugar levels, and it turns out it's nothing to do. I don't know what it is yet, carbohydrates or something, but with me personally, I need to eat if I'm shooting. I need to have not a lot of food, but I need to have, like, food and, like, sugar, in my system. Maybe not pure sugar, but I need to have some type of food for me to shoot well. But
Some
it's
type
for
of
me,
carb.
it's
Yeah.
not blood sugar. It's something else. Um,
Hmm.
Now, somebody else, Katie Emmons, who's a friend of mine, three-time Olympic medalist. She can't eat. Now, she's a three-time Olympic medalist and Olympic champion. She
Okay.
can't eat before she shoots rifle, because if she does, she'll throw up. Because she's so nervous. We're
Oh,
even at World
wow.
Cups. And I'm like, oh my God, if you get that nervous, what chance do I have? You're just like this god of a rifle shooter, right? Um, so everyone's different. Now, rifle shooting is less physically intense than what pistol shooting is, because rifle shooting, you're relying mostly on bone support, muscle relaxation, and stuff. With pistol shooting, you're not relying on that so much. You have bone support, otherwise you just collapse, of course. But there's a lot of muscle tension in pistol shooting. Whereas rifle shooting relies more on flexibility and bone support. So if you're naturally, like, a friend of mine, Mike McPhail, is one of the best, prone rifle shooters. He's not shooting anymore, but he was one of the best prone rifle shooters in the world. Certainly one of the best in America, and that's back when America had the best prone team in the world. He's just naturally very, very, very flexible. So that gives him like a little heads up. It doesn't do everything for him. It just gave him like that head start that we talked about before.
Hmm.
Whereas other rifle shooters I know, they have to spend time, a lot of time, stretching out to make sure that they maintain that flexibility to be in good shooting form. Which is why, like, in the Marine Corps, at least when we went through the Marine Corps, like, I remember in boot camp, I had friends that wrote me and asked me what they need to do to train for boot camp. Do I need to do more push-ups? I was like, no, you need to sit down Indian style for, like, extended periods of time.
Oh,
That is
my
the
gosh.
worst
That
part.
is the truth. Yes.
And right? But why do they do
Yes.
that? To get ready for the sitting position. That's why they do that. Because back then, for table one, or what became later known as table one, the majority of shooting was in sitting position. So they did that to train for sitting position, to get you flexible for that. Now, when was the last time you went back and tried to shoot a sitting position?
Since the team, never.
Well, try it sometime, because it's hard. If
No.
you don't do it regularly, all of a sudden, like, oh my God, where did this pulse beat come from? Is it, like, oh, just because my stomach's
Right.
bigger? Like, it's not just your stomach. It's like you're not as flexible as what you once were. And we all, you and I, and other old Marines would take that for granted, because we were stretched out hardcore in boot camp, where sitting position became, well, this is easy. Um, for those who haven't done that, they gotta work on that, right? So good rifle shooters tend to be, flexible. Good pistol shooters have that, consistency of muscle tension, which becomes really important in pistol shooting. So that's kind of one of the differences. Another
Okay.
difference I'll point out is the two big differences in rifle and pistol, since we're talking about it. And I apologize for the shotgun blast of the podcast, but it's like everywhere. And the only thing we're not talking about is shotgun shooting. So I'm not good at
Good.
that.
We can keep it that way.
Yeah, I'm not good. I'm friends with the best shotgun shooters in the world, but I don't know anything about shotgun. But anyway, the difference in my eyes, the very big difference between rifle and pistol is rifle. Generally speaking, I think most good rifle shooters, their trigger is intimately linked to their sights. So this is dependent on what they see. Whereas a pistol shooter, like I said, your trigger is independent of the sights. It's flipped. It's reversed. Now, I know from experience, you can shoot rifle with the pistol type of trigger control. You can do that and do it well because I've done it. That's what I do because it's my habit. But I think almost all the top rifle shooters I know, their trigger control is linked to what they see. Now, a lot of them, like Matt Emmons, who's the greatest rifle shooter in American history, um, he would train pistol. He was a good pistol shooter. He would train pistol a lot to help him out on his trigger control for rifle. And he shot rapid fire with me. I mean, he wasn't as good as a rapid fire shooter, but right now if Matt Emmons was shooting rapid fire right now in America, he'd probably be the second best in America. So he wasn't internationally good, but he's like domestically he'd be really good at rapid fire. But anyway, in pistol, trigger control is reversed. The other thing that is different between rifle and pistol is in pistol, and this is probably the first time you've heard this thing too. I say for iron sights at least, focus on your rear sight, not focus on your front sight. Focus on what I believe is focus on your front sight. When I was on teams, on the permanent team at the end of the summer, or at the end of the shooting season, we would have a team meeting between rifle and pistol and MMP or MPMS, the strategy guys, right? That would come up with the marksmanship doctrine
Okay.
guys, right? MPMS. And we'd have a week dedicated to lessons learned for the summer, of how to make Marine Corps marksmanship better, which I think is what the Marine Corps teams should exist for, how to make Marine Corps combat marksmanship better. And we'd spend until Friday until about 1000 arguing about rifle. And everyone was so tired by that time, we just try to copy and paste for a pistol. Now, when you're shooting rifle with iron sights, it's your stock weld holds your rear sight in alignment with your eye. So much
Right.
so that Lone Zwigger, the multi-Olympic champion rifle shooter, like the badass American rifle shooter, that Vietnam sniper school instructor guy, came back from Vietnam and 6 months later won the Olympics in 300 meter. Like, bad dude, right? He was laying down in Fort Benning once with his 300-meter gun with had a wood cheek piece back then. The guns were a little bit different back then, a lot different back then than what they are now. They weren't as adjustable, but a solid wood cheek piece, and it had a wooden rasp with them. Took his rear sight off, and he's shooting at 300 meters and taking the rasp and filing on his cheek piece until he started shooting tens without any rear sight, or at least center shots without any rear sight. Then he put the rear sight
Wow.
back on. That's that up until Matt Emmons, best rifle shooter in American history. And even he would say, if he was still alive, that Matt Emmons was better than what he was. But he was phenomenal rifle shooter, great American. Um, the point is, with rifle, your stock weld is what holds your rear sight in alignment. Pistol, you don't have that. It's like you have two front sights hanging
No.
out there in front of you, both moving around, right? So the way the eye works, and I had this epiphany at Marine Corps Championships where I shot, and it's not even a time fire series or rapid fire series. I don't know what happened. The shots are like all over the place. I mean, not all, they were all mostly in the black, I think, but it was a bad target, like a 94 or something. I was like, what the hell? I was focusing on my front sight the whole time. And I was like, oh, I was focusing but I wasn't aligning my sights. I was focusing on my front sight, but I was putting my front sight that was in focus in the middle of the target, but I wasn't worried about sight alignment as much. So everyone says, sight alignment's way more important than what sight picture is, particularly with a short sight radius gun like a pistol. Um, the problem is it's twofold. One, if you focus on your front sight, it gets really easy to disregard where the rear sight is because you're worried about the target, and it's easy to place that front sight on the target or try to. Whereas if you focus on the rear sight, then what you're psychologically more likely to do is try to align the front sight to the rear sight.
But what about the target? Is the target so out of focus that you can't
So
align
target
the
doesn't matter
sights
as
on the
much.
target?
You're aiming at the middle of the blurry thing. How hard is that? It's the middle. Aim at the middle. And so in the Marine Corps pistol team, we used to do, and we got this from the Russians, as far as I know, a blank target drill where we put the repair center on backwards. It's just this, white target. And when we did the old red book, the workbook that the pistol team used to have, every summer you started out with that. You had to shoot 2 consecutive groups that were this big or smaller, uh, with no target to aim at all before you get a target. Then you have a black dot that's the size of the 9 ring. And sure as shit, everybody who shoots, the groups would open up once there was a target down there. But what was funny about it was after you got good, you realized that with a blank target, man, you could shoot really, really tight groups with no target down there. Why? Because you're focusing on sight alignment. That's the
Right.
priority. You have really good contrast, right? And now you're focusing on sight alignment. So I say focus on your rear sight. Psychologically, it puts the emphasis on sight alignment over sight picture. The second thing it does is if you were to do this, if you run this experiment at home, it's even more profound with 2 hands than what it is with 1 hand. Because 1 hand, your pistol's further away from your eyes, so your depth of field is wider at that distance. Um, if you focus on your front sight, your rear sight, and if focus hard on your front sight, and then make a mental, uh, you know, a mental note about how out of focus your rear sight is. Well, like on a scale of 1 to 10 or something like that. Now focus hard on your rear sight and make a different mental note about how out of focus your front sight is. And you'll find by focusing on your rear sight, your front sight will be less out of focus than what your rear sight was when focusing on your front sight. Now, which sight you focus on doesn't matter. What matters is that you align the sights. So my point is, by focusing on your rear sight, you're more likely to align the sights. Now, some other things about focusing on your rear sight. If you're focusing on your rear sight, now with the way your eyes work, the way they accommodate, which is how you focus in and out, is you accommodate out faster than what you accommodate in. And that's presumably like if you're getting chased by a saber-toothed, tiger, you're eating a berry or something like, a million years ago, and a tiger jumps out like, you're able to focus out, real far and see a threat. Also, as your eyes get older, as you and I have both experienced, unfortunately, that you tend to need these things, right? So you can see close up. You need reading glasses
Yeah.
because it takes energy. It takes muscle strength to have your eyes to refocus the lens of your eyes to focus in close, and that lens gets harder and harder as you age. So the point is, relaxing, you focus out. It takes energy to focus in, so it takes longer to focus back. You've heard the 1,000-yard stare from guys who come back from combat or they're really tired or something like that. They have 1,000-yard stare because you're just focusing out. In competition, if you start focusing on your front sight in a string of fire and you start focusing downrange, during like a timed or rapid fire string, particularly in a rapid fire string, it's really, really hard to bring your eyes back to your front sight, right? Because now it's easy to go out. If you're shooting a middle string, it's easy to look downrange. It's really hard to like bring them back, both psychologically and, as it turns out, physically, the way the eyeball works. If you focus on your rear sight, if you start focusing out, you end up focusing on your front sight. Well, it's not that bad. If you start out focusing on your front sight, you're never going to end up focusing on your rear sight, but you might end up focusing on the target. The other thing, which is the least known part, is when shooting night fire. When shooting night fire, because your pupils have dilated, your depth of field becomes very, very narrow. By focusing on your rear sight in a very low light environment, it is almost like a cheat code for shooting well. If you focus on your front sight, it is really hard to align your sights. And you can see this in the targets. Like if it's really, really dark, you won't shoot very well if you're focusing on your front sight. If you bring that focus back to your rear, or attempt to bring the focus back to your rear sight, because sight alignment isn't something you get. It's not really a luxury, but it's something that you strive for. Like you never really get it, but you strive to get sight alignment. Focusing on your rear sight is kind of like that. You're striving to focus on your rear sight. You don't always get there. So like if I'm coming from a holster or something, I'm starting out, I get PID, like I'm looking at the target I'm shooting at, right? And then somewhere up from my draw, about like right here or so, my eyes are going to break contact and I'm going to start looking for sight alignment. The breaking contact does 2 things. One, I'm picking up what should be the only thing in my peripheral, which is moving, which is the pistol and particularly the sights. So it's easy for my eyes to go on the to find the sights and focus. To focus back on the sights. Um, and the other thing it does is it breaks contact from that target a little bit, psychologically, so you can have a more dominant sight alignment focus. Now, your eyes, if you're shooting quick, your eyes never get back to your rear. They might not even get to your front sight because your trigger is going independent of that, right? It's just going, as far as what the situation, dictates, which is a combination of, because sometimes you can shoot it in IPSC stage as fast or as slow as you want. But you, through training, you know how fast you can push it. You know how long it takes you to get back to a sufficient level of focus on sight alignment to get a sufficient level of accuracy to get an A zone hit at that particular distance. So with that experience of training, you know how fast this guy can move, right? The goal
Right.
is you're trying to get your eye focused back in the rear sight. You're probably not going to get there if you're shooting quick, but that's okay. It's the effort to. Now, if it's nighttime, you're going to slow things down because it takes your eyes longer to uh, change and react, and certainly longer for your eyes to like focus. So things are going to get slowed down a little bit with if you're unaided nighttime shooting. So you're not shooting with like night vision on. Um, Now you come up, give it a second or two, and you might not get there, but you're trying to get back to your rear sight, and you'll get your sights there. Then the other trick for like night fire is once you wait a little bit longer for that first shot. Once you start shooting, shoot about this pace. Boom, 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 boom. And what that does is the muzzle flash keeps your sights illuminated. So it's like you're shooting in it's daytime. If you shoot slower than that, then the reaction time, that flash will fade long enough where you lose that benefit. If you shoot too fast, then it's too bright and you don't really have time to whatever. But it's about boom, 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 about that pace. Maybe a little bit faster, maybe a little bit slower, but you can experiment with it. Is just the right amount to keep your sights illuminated where you can get pretty good sight alignment as if it was daytime level of sight alignment. And as long as you started out pointed in the right area, you'll have a really tight group. And like in,
Okay.
in 2000 at AFSAM, they had a night fire stage, which was part of the grand aggregate at first until I shot it. And Major Mickey, who was a really good shooter, really good dude from the National Guard team, he'd won AFSAM a couple years before, a couple years in a row. And I'd been winning all the matches up until that point. We get to night fire match, and it was out of 180, and he shot, I think, like I don't know, like a 106 or something like that, right? And he was the only one who broke 100. He was like, in the lead. I had like a 176 or 177, and everyone thought I cheated.
Wow.
Like, I had three National Guard guys behind me watching me, make sure I didn't have tritium sights or night vision or a flashlight or something, and I didn't. But I knew that strategy, or take longer for my first shot. I wait till I see like a silhouette of the pistol around where that five ring is in the figure 11, combat target. And then once I start shooting, boom, 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 and then it's just, and it's like I'm shooting in its daytime. So the only points I dropped was like the first shot. And before then, I would practice where I'd come up with an M9 with my eyes closed, come up, click, open and close them, and that looks exactly what it looks like when you're shooting at night. So you get really
Oh,
good at
wow.
so you come up in dry fire and it's like click and your sights are off, right? So it's like this. And you get really good at knowing how far over to go at each of those. So I might have my first shot might be off, but by my second shot I'm here. And then I'm like really tight after that if I kept that pace going. So I was able to shoot really, really tight groups with like one flyer, like one or two flyers out, from like the like first shot, which is like not really a point shooting shot, but it kind of is. It's kind of not really a luck shot because you can train for it, but you can't train to super high precision with your eyes closed. Obviously, you have to open your eyes eventually.
Okay.
So
Wow.
again, that
I like it.
and that's another reason why I focus on your rear sight. Now, when you're shooting really fast, multiple targets and stuff, moon targets, you're not going to get back to your rear sight most likely. So it's your best effort to get to your front sight, but you're going to try to maximize sight alignment as much as you can. So again, it's not like you ever get to your rear sight or you ever get to you know perfect sight alignment. These are two things that you're just trying to get to, and there are plenty of times and stages and things like that where you just don't have enough time. So nothing changes. The only thing that changes is how fast this guy's going.
So bottom line is just put a dot on your gun.
And so let's get into that real quick because there's always a debate, iron sights versus a dot, and I can shoot iron sights really good. I can shoot a dot really good. Um, and I know a guy, um, Travis on Team Zero, who's a great shooter, national champion. Not overall, but he's won days and a whole bunch of stages. Who started out shooting with a dot. I used to think, oh, you have to start out shooting iron sights because that's the fundamentals of marksmanship. And he started out shooting a dot. Was shooting a dot for a couple of years, got really good, and then it took him like just a matter of months before he was really good with irons. Um, so I don't think that you have to start out with one or the other. There was a really good argument with like Vietnam era, like Mac V Saw guys about shooting out of muddy water and stuff for iron sights because they don't get they're better in certain types of conditions theoretically. Um, there's certainly an iron sight, not advantage, but less of a disadvantage on the way the Marine Corps qualified on iron sights, like on a Baker target or an Able target, because you had the white contrast. You can shoot
Right.
6 o'clock and things like that.
Right.
Iron sights adjust more repeatably. They're definitely lighter weight, lower profile most of the time. Uh, and if you can shoot them well, there's a lot of advantages to iron sights, I think. Particularly like in combat shooting, just because it's lower profile, there's no batteries, it's less connections. Um,
Less chance of a failure. Yeah.
Well, there's less chances of failure until you get to like a Marine Corps RCO and ACOG. Like I've seen plenty of rear sights and front sights broken in the Marine Corps. I've never seen an RCO broken that didn't get accompanied with an NJP. Like to break an RCO, you got to like run it over. RCOs are incredible. They might come loose, but they are incredibly durable. So as far as the durability is concerned, I'd call it a wash between a good optic and like an RCO or like a like an aim point, acro, which I love. It's on my pistol too. I love the acro. Um, I didn't like the other aim points, but the acro I do like a lot. Um, the advantage to a dot really crystallized for me at World Cup Rio last year. So was it 2024 World Cup Rio? It was the last chance to get a country quota. A country quota for the Olympics is like just because you're in a country like America or any other country, you can't just go to the Olympics. You have to earn a spot. And not earn a spot domestically, you have to earn a spot internationally. So there's only so many starts, right? At the games. So the way that it works is there's a maximum of 2 quota slots that are given out for each shooting discipline per country. Each individual can only earn one. Um, so what happens is you have to go compete and either win or be the highest place finisher who doesn't already have a quota in a designated World Cup, World Championships, maybe Pan Am Games or something like that. I'm really proud that in all the Olympic games I shot, I earned my quota at a World Cup. I earned twice at Munich, which is the hardest World Cup in most people's view, and once in World Cup Changwon, South Korea, which is an Asia World Cup, which is also very, very difficult. So I'm really proud about those. Rio was the last chance. And I'd medaled in Rio in 2016. I got a silver in the test event in Rio, so I thought I was comfortable with that range. It's iron sights again because it's in the Olympics. Now in rapid fire, your target, like the whole 5 ring, is black, so it's a big black dot you're aiming at, right? You don't see any. There's no scoring rings. The scoring rings are all digital, right? They aren't there. They're on the computer, right? But the
So
computer,
you're just basically aiming at a black dot.
big black dot.
Yeah.
And your sights are black, right? So I blacken my sights, try to make my sights blacker than what the black of the target is. In Rio last year, they had the lights off or something. Plus, they have lights on your face, right? Because they want you to look good on camera, right? So you have this bright light in your face. You'd come up and the sight's gone. It's a black hole. You don't see anything. Like it was nothing, and it was just it's muscle memory. So you come up and dung 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 dung, and you catch sight alignment if you're lucky, like between targets. You're like, oh my god, you have like that eighth of a second to try to align them before it's back in the black again. Um, that's why every single one of us had a 1 or 0 hit series, and this is like the last 3 Olympic champions were in that final. Everyone else in that final, other than me,
Mm.
was an Olympic medalist. So that final was nothing but Olympic medalists and Olympic record holders because I had an Olympic record in the Beijing Games. So it was just metal. It was all the top shooters in the world, right? And all of us shot at least one, most of us, a couple terrible, terrible series. It was, I attribute it mostly, not because of the pressure, because it was high pressure, obviously, but mostly because of that, you couldn't see the target.
The
Now, if I would
lighting.
have had it,
Yeah.
if I would have had an aim point acro on that gun, it would have been a different story. Uh, Now, I've shot international rapid fire with dots before, and well, dots are iron sights. I'd probably pick iron sights because the sights are lower to your hand. There's probably some biological or some biomechanical advantage to having your sights lower, but in that situation, having an illuminated dot was an incredible advantage. Tactically, like if you're entering a house or a room or a dark area and you're using white light, iron sights are a big advantage because as soon as you turn that white light on, boom, your sights like jump out at you.
They're like
If you have a
skyline. Yeah.
dot, you have to have the dot turned up bright enough beforehand for so you still be able to see it with that lot of white coming, all those lumens, bouncing off a white wall or something like that. So you start out with a dot that's either too bright for dark conditions or not bright enough for bright conditions.
Yeah.
Um, so that was the advantage to iron sights on a combat pistol, or even combat rifle. Um, Now the get around in that is you have backup irons, like you have the lower 130 of on a pistol. You have irons that are just barely in the bottom of the window. Now you have the best of both worlds. You have the dot that is working all the time, and if in a situation where you were used to use white light and you get a lot of splashback, whatever, you have the iron sights are there, even if the dot wasn't visible. So that might be the best of both worlds. But if I had to pick one now, it would be a dot if I was going to pick for combat, and it wouldn't be like an RMR with an open emitter, because an open like it's funny how Camp Perry pistol to me has informed me so much about what I would want and what I wouldn't want in combat. Like it should be the furthest thing away, but
Yeah.
on this gun, right, has it open the LED, right, is
Is
open.
open.
So I
Right.
can't parry. A single raindrop would defeat this.
Right.
One raindrop and I can't shoot anymore. Whereas if you have a closed emitter dot like an aim point acro, or
Right.
like an aim point
There's a bunch of
9000,
them
or
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We've been shooting them with them, like I started shooting with an aim point 1000 on the Marine Corps team in '96. We had ultra dots, and the bullseye shooters have had dots on pistols since the '80s. All of those were enclosed emitters. It was when the Trigicon reflex sight had come out, was the first open. Well, the Seymour sight had in it was an open sight. So the Seymour sight in IPSC was the first one. Um, Trigicon reflex was, I bought one of those that had a really crisp round dot. I tried to shoot it with a bullseye, but again, one raindrop, it was defeated. So like, well, I can't use this guy. And then you had the RMR. I bought the first RMR when they came out. I have it around here somewhere. It's terrible, unusable. A lot of parallax in the RMRs and a lot of distortion. They've gotten a lot better with dots, and now the new hotness is an enclosed emitter dot. There's a lot more of them on the market. I still
Right.
think the aim point acro is king of the closed emitter dots. They might be ugly because it looks like a mailbox, is what people complain about. But I have them on a rifle. Have them on pistols. I let a friend of mine in Ukraine borrow one that I brought with me. He had it on an AK-12 that he got from a Russian who kindly gave it to him after he died, and then he gave it he gave it back to the Russians after he died. But with my aim point acro. But acros I like a lot because they work good even under 5x magnification. If you have a 3 or 5x magnifier, like an EOTech 5x magnifier, or any one of the good 3x magnifiers out there, the acro dot's still nice and round and crisp once you have the magnifier adjusted right. Even with stigmatism, the acro dot looks really good. One of the things you'll notice about dots is if you have a stigmatism, the dot might look all screwed up. Now, for bullseye, we knew about this for years. We just didn't know it was astigmatism that had caused it. And I remember being at Camp Perry, and I was complaining to like somebody, like, man, every year these ultra dots are getting worse and worse. These dots used to be good, and now they're all getting worse and worse. Every year they're worse. And then I had my iron sight shooting glasses on, which had my prescription in them because I had the blinder, already on the glasses. Like, oh man, this dot looks good. And I go, wait a minute. Ah, shit. The dots weren't getting worse. My eyes were getting worse. I was getting a stigmatism in my right eye from shooting. Um, But for some reason, the aim point acro, whatever type of widget, whatever type of wizardry aim point does with those, and some of the T2s, I think, they don't seem to be that sensitive to a stigmatism like a lot of dots are. And even some hollow suns I've seen have good dots that look nice, clear and crisp, even with astigmatism. Then they have green dots, and there's red dots and some gold dots out there. Now, as far as that, depending on the type of eye you have and the type of stigmatism you have, a green dot might look rounder to you than a red dot, or vice versa. Um, as far as if they both look good, it's just whatever your background is, which one you're going to pick. Typically, the
Right.
reason why you'd pick green over red would be theoretically, not theoretically, actually the human eye is a lot more sensitive to the color green than it is to the color red, which you can see that in lasers. So you have two 5 milliwatt lasers that are both 5 milliwatts. They're putting out the same number of photons. You have a green one and a red one. The green one looks apparently a lot brighter than what the red one is. It isn't, just the human eye is more sensitive to the color green.
That's why I prefer green dots. So, all right. So I'm going to hit you with one final question. You've been all around the world shooting. What has been your favorite place to go to shoot?
It'd either be between Baku, Azerbaijan, and Thun, Switzerland. I saw Sism in Thun, Switzerland. Beautiful, beautiful place in Switzerland. Um, I'm biased towards that because, oftentimes how you judge a match is biased by how you perform in it. And
Right?
I tied a world record and won Sism Military Rapid Fire World Championships my first time there. So that might have been, if I wouldn't have won, it might have been like, oh, that was terrible. I don't know, but because of that, I was that was really, really good.
Fond of memories.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and as far as range quality, I remember talking with Cole from the NRA. He's the competitions guy at the NRA. This is back when they were trying to kick off Atterbury, trying to get that up and running, and trying to basically sell that. I was on the NRA small bore committee for rifle for some reason. Um, and he was saying how, oh, it's a world class range. We're going to pave the parking lot here in a couple years. And then afterwards, we had a break. I'm like, hey, you need to be careful saying things like world class, because I measure world class by how many coffee shops and pizza places are on the range. I take for granted that the parking lot's paved. I take for granted that it's air conditioned. I take for granted that there's all electronic targets, 1,000 electronic targets there. All of that's like a given. You have none of that there at Atterbury. I judge it by the quality of the coffee shops, right? And so Baku, Azerbaijan is an incredible. It's all astroturf and like wood paneling, and like it's like 1,000 electronic targets there. Really beautiful, beautiful range. Stadium seating. Um, yeah, there's a lot of food choices right there. There's a hotel that's part of it, like right across the parking lot. That's a really the Beijing range is really, really nice. Um, the Shanghai range in China is also incredible. But yeah, there's some really, really nice ranges out there. Everyone's fond of Munich and International because we go to Munich almost every year. It's an old range. It's from the 72 games, so it's an older range. Um, but Munich is kind of the home of marksmanship worldwide. So that's probably, I get 3 medals in Munich. So I do have some fond memories there. I've also not medaled in Munich a lot more than I medaled in Munich, so I have a lot of bad memories in Munich probably too. Uh,
Not enough coffee shops.
yeah, yeah. They do have a nice restaurant on there. And the fun thing about Munich is when you medal, you have to go through doping, right? And so they'll escort you over to the bar. Is every range in Europe has a bar attached to it. So and they'll let you order 2 big things of Hefeweizen, right? So I'm slam those. All right, I have to pee. There's no more waiting around drinking Gatorade trying to like pee in a cup. Drink 2 big beers and you're ready to go right away. So I do like Munich for that. But I'd say Azerbaijan is my favorite range. Baku is a really, really beautiful range. It's probably one of the best ranges I've ever shot on. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we've been going probably about 3.5 hours now when we cut out the the audio
Yeah.
issue that we had.
Yeah.
I mean, I could keep going, but I've got other stuff. I'm sure you have other stuff. So how about maybe in the new year sometime we revisit some of these topics and I'll have more questions for you.
Yeah. Sounds good. I look
Okay.
forward to shooting together sometime too. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you plan on going to Camp Perry or Cardinal Center this year for pistol, but it'd be fun. Shoot some
I
bullseye.
yeah, I'm down for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll
I
just
got
have
a
to
lot of
coordinate it
we
and
got
I'll
the
be
World
there.
Championships coming up this year, which is once every 4 years. That's a big deal for us on in USA shooting, because that's the first opportunity to win an Olympic quota for the 2028 games. Um, a real quick thing about that is because US is the host country for the 2028 Olympics, we have a free quota in every shooting event. So,
Nice.
um, but I want to earn a quota for a teammate to go. So, and it'd be really, really nice to earn one at the World Championships. Um, so I'm going to try to make a push for that. We'll see.
Well, I'm very familiar with Cardinal, so just let me know when, you'll be there and I'll try to make it to Cardinal.
It'll be July. I'm not sure when it'd be
Okay.
the NRA National Championships are at Cardinal now, since the CMP and NRA are two siblings that just can't get along. Uh,
Right.
but last year at Cardinal, or this year at Cardinal, I thought it was a very, very well. It was a big improvement. Whatever Cole's doing at NRA, I think it's having an effect. It's a big improvement over what it has been at the NRA Nationals since since the split. So Cardinal was a lot better. He was really open to shooter feedback. So hopefully this coming year, Cardinal will be even better for the NRA National Championships. Um, so I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to have to get to my holding drills, that's for sure. So,
I'll tell you what, dry fire and extended follow through fixes like 90% of every mistake you can make.
that's
After
what
you get
I'll
to a
be
certain
doing then.
point, dry fire,
Yeah.
lots of follow through. Your hold will get better. Even for action shooting, um, follow through. So I shoot a different target every half of a second. When I'm practicing, when I'm dry firing, I have like 10 seconds of follow through on each target. Follow through goes away all
Hmm.
by itself. As soon as you have to shoot fast, it's gone in an instant. So you don't have to
Right.
worry about it going. You don't have to worry about, oh, I might have too much follow through when I'm shooting in this match. Nope, it goes away all by itself. But for training, it's a really good skill.
Awesome. Keith, I appreciate all your time and coming on. It's been awesome.
Sure, it's been great talking with you.
Good luck with
Sorry
everything.
about
And
sorry about all the audio stuff.
that's okay. Well,
We,
good
we,
luck
we
with
can blame
everything,
Tim Cook.
especially in the Olympics.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Take care.
All right, bye.